Looks like we're live.
Start the show. Hey, let's start the show.
It's January 22nd, 2014. Welcome to This Is Only a Test, the official podcast of Tested.com.
Right.
Look at that fucking squirrel on my bird feeder.
And then suddenly, the Enterprise D's bridge.
I'm Will Smith. Fading out slowly in the background is the Enterprise D's bridge. Seems like this just goes on for a long time. Norman Chan, How are you doing, sir?
Doing all right.
You have a big white box on your desk, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. Jeremy Williams,
Hi.
welcome back to the show.
Thanks. I love that dubstep intro.
The drops are heavy.
I guess that's an old thing for you guys. I've never heard it before.
So many wubs.
Dubstep. Remember dubstep?
Oh, no, I'm with it.
Yeah,
I didn't know it was old.
we got deep into dubstep like 2 years ago, maybe back when Gary was. I think that was when we were still recording in my dining room after the whiskey sale and before we had an office that had air conditioning and stuff. So
I'm pro dubstep intro.
it's a little tricky because I like the dude who made the dubstep intro didn't have a clean take on the first few chimes. So the dubstep intro starts at the third chime.
You have to mix it.
So I have
You
to,
have to DJ it
I have to
yourself.
live play that. I play the normal song.
Yep.
And then at the second chime, I hit the second button. So it's like
Yeah.
Just like Girl Talk.
I know, it's
You're
amazing.
like Skrillex right here.
I'm just saying I make dubstep right here. I feel like the baddest ass podcast DJ in the world. Not really. How's everybody? So this is a good opportunity for you to comment if you're watching this on YouTube or on Tested or listening on your podcast about how much you hate the dubstep intro because that's what happens that's why we stopped using it.
Oh, I see.
It's a little tricky. But how are you doing, sir?
Well. I'm doing well.
We're recording this on Wednesday afternoon, and it has been a busy technology news morning already.
I'll say. Who would have thought Microsoft could make so much news?
I assume you can't talk about the thing that you saw this morning, Norm, right?
I can talk about it. It's
Oh, you
on the
can?
list.
Okay. Oh, you put it on the list. Oh, good.
As long as this podcast comes up after 6 a.m.
Tomorrow?
PST, the day that this podcast normally comes out on.
That should be no problem.
No problem whatsoever.
So Microsoft had a huge Windows 10 keynote announcement thing this morning. They flew a bunch of people up to Seattle and put them in the visitor center conference room or a theater, amphitheater, I guess, and kind of updated on what's been happening with Windows 10 since build last fall. They talked about they showed a lot more of the OS working. Last time they kind of talked in vague specifics about, here's what we're going to do. We're going to unify the start screen apps and the desktop. We're going to kind of smooth off the rough edges of Windows. We're going to make it so that the OS is more aware of what mode you're using the device in. Like the OS will be more aware of, okay, this is a Surface tablet without the keyboard attached. It'll behave differently with the keyboard attached, without the keyboard attached, stuff like that. But they didn't really give a lot of concrete examples, and they didn't show kind of specifics. They didn't show a ton of specifics with this today, but they showed more working. And I thought it was overall a really good showing on Microsoft's part. I thought that it was like this is the most excited I've been about Windows since probably the Windows 7 announcement.
Yeah,
a
me
long
too.
time ago.
Now, from the build conference, I was excited about small things like they're bringing the start menu back.
Yeah.
And there's better copy and paste from the command prompt, which I actually use from time to time. But there's some real concrete things to be kind of excited about now. Not to mention, can we talk about pricing?
Yeah, so the big thing is that it's going to be free for Windows 8 users and Windows 7 users with an asterisk.
So they initially announced it as free for anyone with Windows 7 and Windows 8, and you put 1 without distinguishing between 8 and RT. So
Presumably, RT devices are going to get it regardless.
the question was asked at
the
the
Q&A?
Q&A, and they said that will be announced later.
But they said they were working on it.
Working on it. So who knows? But for a year, and then apparently it's 8 forever. If you have Windows 8, then you get the upgrade.
So what Yahoo said, presumably this is presumably based on pre-briefing, is that Windows 8 users will always have will always be able to upgrade. Windows 7, the free upgrade is a limited time 1-year offer from the time of launch, I assume.
They want to get as many people on Windows 8 or Windows 10 as possible.
Well, and so the executive who announced this also said, I think it was Terry Myerson, but I'm not sure, said that it was going to be that they were treating Windows as a service rather than a product,
But not a subscription service.
So they clarified this in the Q&A as well. What they meant was Microsoft is treating Windows as a service, meaning that they're going to be updating it more frequently, and it'll be more of a gradual progression than hard stops between releases as OSs have traditionally been. So they'll constantly be adding new stuff to it. They didn't say that they were going to go to it. There's no change in the business model for Windows for home users, which to me says, hey, we're not going to do a subscription service.
So is there just one version of Windows 10?
Haven't said any of that stuff yet. I would assume so given what we know.
You hope so.
You would hope. I think if you're talking about departures from the past, the reasons of multiple SKUs of Windows is pricing. You can segment pricing, and you can also integrate charge more for server stuff,
right,
and support it differently.
My hunch is that a lot of this seems to be a reaction to the success of Chromebooks in the last 8 or 12 months, especially at the low end laptop price point, sub $500 and sub $200 laptops. Google gives away Chrome OS for free. Microsoft has started giving away Chrome OS for free at that price range. Windows, yeah, sorry. But they haven't. They don't have a good way to make money on Windows when they're giving it away for free. My guess is that we'll see some sort of like Xbox Live Gold style. Here's default Windows, but then if you pay us $60 a year, $99 a year, whatever it ends up being, here's what you get. Here's some added benefit stuff that you get on top of it, and that may include like Office or light versions of Office. It's kind of the Office 365 / OneDrive model, and it's what Google does with storage as well, rolling out to Windows. So they're going to look at it more as, here's a thing that we can get people to use. What ways can we get money off of them other than charging them $99 at Best Buy to buy an upgrade?
So no
disc?
initial bottom line, and so OEMs aren't going to pay.
I would
Windows to put Windows 10 on laptops?
On cheap laptops. I can't imagine if you're HP and you're looking at a Chromebook that you can sell for $200 or the same exact thing that runs Windows for $100 more.
Let's say a $1,000 laptop. Let's say an Ultrabook.
I think that Windows will still call. I think what we'll see is a difference in SKUs. I think that the version that comes on the Chromebooks will be light and small enough to run on a 32 or 64 gigabyte SSD versus a 256 or 512 gigabyte SSD that you'd see in an Ultrabook, and a heavy emphasis on cloud storage, so that Microsoft is then charging. You get 100 gigs free of cloud space, OneDrive space when you buy the device. But if you want to go beyond that, then you have to pay a monthly fee or something like that.
Do analysts anticipate that this affects the bottom line initially significantly?
I don't know. The thing that my understanding of Windows from the time that I was covering Windows on a regular basis, which was Windows through Windows 7 basically, was one of my beats at Maximum PC. And my understanding was that retail sales to consumer of OS, including OEM editions that people buy from Newegg to put on their home-built PCs and upgrades for existing machines, is a tiny, tiny percentage of the revenue that Microsoft expected to generate off of Windows. So my hunch is they're saying, look, we're going to throw away 5 to 10% of our bottom line on Windows in the hopes that it gets people signed up for services, with a plan to sign people up for services that will generate X amount of revenue that's greater than the 5 to 10% that we're throwing away. That's like.
I'm also glad you said it was a model that you think they are adopting off of Chrome and Chromebooks on the low-cost side, and not the iterative upgrade cycle of Apple, because that has come to.
It's a boondoggle.
That has come to bite them, at least in perception, of late.
I mean, we've been talking about kind of drift on OS 10 and iOS. And while they add neat features every year, like starting with Siri and Apple Maps, the Apple OSs have gotten a little bit crappier each year, or maybe not crappier, but just less reliable and less kind of rock solid than they were in the, say, Snow Leopard days, right? I think that the service model is the way to go for OSs, because it lets them respond much more quickly to both things that change inside their ecosystem. Because with Microsoft, there's dozens or hundreds of companies building products for their platform, and if they can't adapt the OS to take advantage of the stuff that people are coming up with to put into those devices, then they're going to fall behind. Apple doesn't have that problem, because they know exactly what they're making and they roll it out on a regular release schedule.
Assuming that Windows 10 is a success and something that people want to install, seems like the only people who will be using Windows 7 will be the pirates.
Or the stalwarts and diehards, right? I mean, there's always a lot of people don't upgrade, just don't upgrade.
Yeah, familiarity is a rare thing.
Yeah, I wouldn't upgrade my parents. If my parents were still using a PC, I wouldn't upgrade their PC to something that looks new like Windows 8. Just period. So let's see. They talked about a ton of stuff. Unified approach across all the platforms, so all of your stuff syncs across the devices. It's much more seamless in the way with a kind of cloud-mediated syncing, so you can put something down on one device, pick it up on the other. At the same time, the devices will be more tuned to work in the way that you would expect. So a desktop PC will boot into the desktop mode when you have a keyboard and mouse attached to it. If you have a touchscreen attached to it, you may have to choose, so that your Surface will behave differently when it has the keyboard attached than when you're just using it as a pure tablet, which is kind of the way it should have been to begin with. They also talked about unifying, obviously. Metro modern apps will be able to work inside Windows on the desktop like normal applications. All of the ways to switch tasks in Windows 8 will be unified so that your modern apps and your desktop apps are all the same. That stuff kind of happened with Windows 8.1.
I still launch things in 8.1 that go into the Metro style that I don't know how to exit. And that maybe
you have to hit the Windows key. Windows D.
Windows D.
Yeah,
See,
Windows D.
I Alt F4 that stuff, and I figure
What's Alt F4? Close
the current app.
Oh yeah, you can get stuck in Windows in Metro. Like when Gina was using my desktop computer, which she doesn't do anymore because of Windows 8.1, she got stuck in there and didn't know how to get out of a modern app.
Yeah, right.
It's just like a lot of this stuff. Just to be clear, a lot of this stuff are things that they should have done with 8 before they rolled out 8 to consumers.
Yes.
Like you shouldn't have been able to buy 8 until the control panels either duplicated functionality between Metro and modern and desktop apps, or you used one control panel or the other, but didn't have half of your settings in one thing. But inexplicably, when you need to connect a Bluetooth device, you have to go to the modern control panel.
We all know that Windows 8 was a big investment in trying to get into the tablet space and mobile space and that UI, and then trying to bolster user.
Well, and I think it was also to take a part of every app sale on Windows. I mean, I think the goal ultimately was, hey, we need to have an app store for Windows.
Yeah.
Which was an abysmal failure because it wasn't very good.
So it's possible they may end up selling these premium services on the App Store, right?
I would assume that these premium services go through your Windows Live ID, yeah.
Yeah. I hope I don't have to pay for a remote desktop. That's all I want. I just want free remote desktop.
Well, I mean, you can get remote desktop with a third-party thing, but
Microsoft's has always been the highest frame rate in my experience.
it's good for everything that's not DirectX or video, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so my hunch is that if they're charging for stuff, it'll be base level features are free, and then you pay X number of dollars a month for professional or whatever. Yeah. The stuff that you previously would have gotten a higher SKU for.
It's risky territory when you're talking about things like Dropbox versus integration with Drive.
Well, so the difference between what Microsoft is doing and what Apple's doing, if you want to look at services, is that Microsoft is actually embracing other platforms. So you can use your iOS device with OneDrive, but you can't use your iCloud stuff on a Windows phone.
Right.
And while you can use iCloud on a Windows
if the service
PC,
that they want to sell is OneDrive subscription, much like Dropbox, and the competitive advantage is that with Windows 10 you have better integration, then you're also talking about the same stuff they were doing 15, 20 years ago.
with IE
competitive.
bundling?
Yes.
I think it's a little bit different scenario now.
I'm sure that they are aware of the risks, but
You're talking
how
about
else do you
government
sell,
regulation.
How else do you sell competitive advantage?
I think you do the same thing that they did on Xbox Live, where they take, here are the features that feel like premium features and segment them out and say, if you want to get access
But
to
Xbox, you
multiplayer.
can't get a third party for those premium features. On Windows, theoretically, you can get an alternative.
So then in that world, their alternative has to be more compelling for both people who exclusively use Windows. I mean, it may be that they're looking at saying, look, we're going to make this the best thing that we can make for people who only use Windows. That's fine. I think that if they're smart, so to take a step further back, the tonal difference between this talk today and say the Windows 8 announcement was that the Windows 8 announcement, the tone of that was, this is the thing we're doing. You better get in line because it's going to happen, and you want to be on the forefront, not on the trailing edge. This seemed to be, hey, we want to make something that people actually like to use and works the way that they expect them to work, rather than we're jamming this thing down your throat whether you like it or not.
It's a more humbled approach.
I thought it was tonally it was the more interesting press conference I've seen in the last 6 or 12 months.
And it's something we would have seen 5 years ago at CES. This is exactly the thing that we would have seen at
Maybe
CES.
I don't know.
Yes, it would have been their keynote.
This
would have been.
This was so focused on one thing, whereas the Microsoft keynotes were the whole spectrum of Microsoft crap.
This was a whole spectrum of Microsoft Windows crap in terms of looking forward to the future, in terms of professional things. I'm glad they didn't do it at CES. I'm glad the thing no longer exists, but it is very similar to a Bill Gates CES keynote.
It got a little more in the weeds than a Bill Gates CS keynote would have, I think. But yes, you're right. There was a wide spectrum of stuff on display. They would have shown more hardware OEM stuff. They would have shown something from the future, like cars or connected homes or cable
they did show
boxes or
something
something
from the
like
future.
that.
I think we did see.
We
the
did see
future.
something from the future, but they would have shown something from the immediate future as well.
I missed the desktop talk. Can you tell me about Cortana on the desktop?
So, Cortana on the desktop is basically a voice assistant a la Siri or Google Now or Alexa on the Amazon Echo, tied to the Windows ecosystem. It seemed to be deeply embedded. Now, at this point, I haven't had, literally, we were recording this right after that stream ended. I wrote the post, and my stream was up and down constantly, so I may have missed some important, super huge moment, and I haven't had a chance to rewatch it yet. The demos were really, really underwhelming of what Joe Belfiore was showing on stage.
So what type of questions and what type of responses?
There was knowledge graph type stuff. So they were asking, I don't remember the specific knowledge graph example, but it was on the same line of, how tall do you have to be to ride the roller coaster in San Jose?
So she parses Wikipedia.
Or other, it parses stuff that Bing understands.
Okay.
Hey, Cortana speaks Bing. Great. That is old technology that works really well in Google's case and really poorly in Apple's case.
Right.
I expect Bing to be somewhere in between.
Yeah, but Google
That's
uses
good.
Wikipedia for a lot of their information.
And,
Right.
And
does
Wolfram Alpha.
Right. Yeah.
But ultimately, it's all driven off of knowledge graph on the search.
On the Google side,
On the
yes.
Google
And
side.
Does Bing pull that out in
Bing
the big
had-
quote at the top? Like if
Bing-
you do a search for that?
I don't know if they pull it out in the big quote, but they have long prided themselves on the quality of their semantic
Contextual,
understanding of
Got
contextual
it.
information. I would
and the way
expect
they
that to
display
be
information. It's not just a quote. Like they will present it, much like Google does, present the results differently based on what they think you're searching for. And I'm sure the ads that go along with that. Cortana on desktop is just like when we were talking about Alexa on the Echo and the Amazon Echo. It is them needing the vocal interface. They need data. They need people to use it. And building it into Windows is a no-brainer. I think that having it on Windows Phone, Windows 10 Mobile or Windows Mobile, is not enough to get people to buy that phone. So just put it everywhere.
and I mean, Google does that. You can say okay Google in Chrome and it pops up
Can you do that on the desktop?
on the
now?
desktop. Yeah, you have to turn it on. It may only be. I think it was anything after like build 35 or something like that. It's been
Now-
in for a while.
What it doesn't do, that to the best of my knowledge, is it doesn't do what Google Now does, which is provide information ahead of when you've actually searched for it. And
Well, so this is you mean the Google Now cards specifically. So this is one of the things he talked about in a very non-concrete way. But he said that Cortana was now aware of all the contextual information that you put into the system. So in addition to being a knowledge graph type search, it also seems to be a search of things like your calendar and email and contacts and notes that you've made and things like that. I assume in some subset of the applications that are available on Windows. It was pretty vague. It was kind of boring because there was a fairly good lag between the two interactions.
I think voice search is much less interesting to us than it is for next generation, a younger generation, like Jeremy, like your son, who their primary interaction with computers is voice.
Do you think?
Yeah, if you think we get frustrated with Siri, these kids, but they are persistent. They will ask Siri to send an email to their dad for 5 minutes until she finally understands what it is they're saying.
It's something funny that happened this week is my daughter now, because my wife uses the Amazon Echo as a timer for kitchen and laundry and all that stuff. So it goes off fairly regularly throughout the day.
Yeah.
And now when she sees, when the timer goes off, she says, "Alexa, stop." but she's a toddler, so she doesn't have very good enunciation. Doesn't understand.
I think human
Pretty
interaction, the interaction experts underestimate the potential of voice, and maybe the technology has
You think so?
has been ready.
It's just still futuristic.
I think we're still in the very nascent stages of that.
Frustratingly
stuff working.
so. We feel like we've been stuck in those ages for a while. It's like we got these interesting
Well, I mean,
tools.
It's not a simple problem to solve.
Siri launched with the 4S,
4S.
and that was October of 2011. So we're literally 4 years in. The Google Now stuff is already a leap ahead of what Siri was doing.
Yeah.
The Siri changes that came with iOS 8 it's dramatically improved. I don't know if you've used it, if you use it still.
And it is, and voice interaction is tied to AI. I mean, all of search is tied to AI, and it is really a race to who could build the best AI engine and the best AI service.
And the best collection of information that's relevant to what people are asking for.
And then that AI will be sold as a service.
You think so?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe to the enterprise, but
Exactly. Medical, enterprise, any type of industry, like Watson, like IBM's in that game
Right.
already. You use the user, like the end user, as a way to strengthen it, to teach it, and then you sell its abilities, your proprietary algorithms and your data centers as a service to small companies who need that kind of parsing, the smarts.
Put another way, we've cloud storage as a service that people pay for and that companies pay for and use has been around for a fairly long time. But the use of compute beyond simple databases and web serving and stuff like that is relatively new. Game servers were probably the first online thing that you could buy compute for, like CPU cycles on a data center someplace. Voice is the first kind of mainstream mass market use of that outside of web serving and game servers
You
that
think
I
of
can think of.
Any startup, in 10 years from now, is going to have some type of AI component, and they're not going to want to build the processing centers and the data centers and the algorithms. They'll just license that, and it'll be, this service with AI provided by Google or Amazon or Microsoft or Facebook.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a big company. The thing that's interesting about this is it's a big company problem, right?
Yeah.
It is a thing that requires billions of dollars of R&D to reach a point where it's shitty, and then more honing and work over a long period of time to get it good. I mean, we've seen 4 iterations of the iPhone since Siri came out, and it's just now getting to a point where I use it without cringing every time.
All right, so what other desktop applications were shown?
There's a ton of stuff. They showed Mail client running, Outlook running on both the phone and the desktop or a PC of some kind. It's unclear. Like, they didn't show enough of that to know whether it's the same UI across both devices. It's kind of scaled up for the PC. It's unclear whether it's still a dumbed down PC interface compared to the phone, or if they're actually making the PC client good on a PC context and the phone client good in a phone context, and keeping the stuff that makes sense between the two. I think we'll have to actually use it to know how well they've accomplished that. But they are universal apps now. So this is the thing that they said is it's an app that you write once. It seems like it runs on the phone, runs on the PC, runs on other platforms without caveats. Whereas in the past they said you have to use certain APIs and subsets of APIs and stuff like that. So that's interesting, but we won't really know about that until we see it running in the real world.
The most important desktop app.
This
they
is
showed,
the big one. Yeah, it's Project Spartan is their IE replacement.
They love Halo.
Man, if you got Halo, you best lean into it. Oh, by the way, if you can't change your nickname with Cortana, so she calls you Chief, they've really fucked that up, right? Am I the only one who thought that? Cortana, call me Chief. Okay, Chief. That's all I
chiefs.
want.
good.
So many chiefs.
So as I was watching this demo, they ran through a couple of things that the browser does. The 2 key features that they showed were the ability to highlight and leave notes on web pages and then share that with people. I think OS 10 added that in the last version of Safari, which I don't think anybody really uses.
They'd add that to their email client.
Oh, it's the email client. That's
Yeah.
right. I'm not I don't know if that's a feature that people need. The reading mode, they're adding a reading mode that works more like Instapaper than, say, Safari's reading mode. So you'll get a stripped down, no web page around your article, view of an article. It saves that information to the cloud, so that then when you open up that same reading view on your phone, the thing will be there whether you're actually connected to the internet at the time or not, which I think is a really interesting thing to integrate in the OS, but isn't the kind of thing that makes me change browsers, because I already have third-party extensions that can do that. It's a universal application. It's Cortana aware, it seemed like, from what they were talking about. So you can ask Cortana things inside the browser, like look up words, highlight dates and times and stuff like that, and then use that to add them to the calendar in an almost fantastically way. They didn't talk about things like the renderer. Whether they're using an open source project, grew their own in-house, or have evolved the IE renderer. Seems like it's probably not going to replace IE at first, especially on x86. It's not in the build of Windows 10 that's going out to the Insider preview program later this week, but it will be coming in coming months.
3 to 4 to 5 months.
Yeah, I mean, a new browser which also tells us that they're not expecting to release Windows 10 for 3 to 4 to 5 months.
Oh, I mean,
Probably. I mean, nobody's surprised by that, but
October.
yeah, September, October. Like I said, universal app. They didn't talk about whether you could have extension support, how plugins and stuff like that work for things like Java and Flash. Should you want to install that in 2015, where we shouldn't need that shit anymore. I would assume they didn't talk about performance or anything. The design is very minimalist. The tabs are above the frame of the window. There's no bars. They didn't show any bars. Minimal kind of UI Chrome to click on stuff. It looked fine, but again, it's the kind of thing that you won't really know what is there until you actually use it for a while. I think it's interesting that they think that the IE name is so utterly trashed that they're not calling it a version of IE, and they said, okay, we're going to just start over, and here's the new name. But if they had to start over to make it universal, good on them. And theoretically, if these applications are all universal, it should be easier for them to maintain and roll out new features more quickly that then apply to all the platforms. Like if they can use these universal apps to sidestep carriers being slow to update their OS on the phone side, that makes Windows more interesting to me in a lot of ways than other stuff. It's kind of what Google did by moving the key apps to the Play Store rather than the OS level last year, or the year before, I guess now. So yeah, all the Windows 10 stuff is coming to the Insider program. Desktop users will get an update next week or later this week. Phone users will be updated in February, but as typically that is at the mercy of the carriers. I guess you can unlock your phone, put it in dev mode if you want to live on the edge. They also talked about Xbox integration. This is the last thing. So they talked about games. Seems like every 10 years or so, Microsoft cares about PC games again. They showed, on the Xbox front, they showed an Xbox overlay that I think you got to by pressing Windows key plus G. That popped up a UI that then let you do the Xbox DVR from the Xbox One. So on the Xbox One, when you say Xbox record that, it takes a buffer of the last few minutes of gameplay and saves it as a video that you can then edit and upload to different services. They showed Xbox.
So
It's worth pointing out, though,
desktop or is this?
Yeah,
This is desktop.
It's worth pointing out, too, that this worked on a Steam game.
Yeah, this works on.
You don't have to be
yes.
running something within a Windows, environment, some sort of Windows layer.
And Nvidia has had
Nvidia's
this.
had that for years.
So-
Yeah,
but
no
this is just for
doubt.
games.
But
This
this is Microsoft we're talking about.
Yeah.
So it's good for them.
It's built in, and at this point, like the Nvidia released it before there was probably widespread enough hardware support for the encode stuff for it to be applicable to everyone. At this point, every CPU that's sold has H.264 live encode in it. So, I think that's a great feature. I think it's a good thing.
But it's
to
only
have.
for game DVR. It's not recording your desktop.
It's only for game DVR.
Got it.
It seems like that layers
through DX12.
It seems like that layer or DX11 or whatever. It seems like it's through DirectX rather than through the display model WDDM. They showed the Xbox app showing the friends list on the PC, which I think you can do now with the Windows version of the Smart Glass app. If you want to see what your Xbox Live friends are into, this would have been infinitely more useful, say 10 years ago when the Xbox 360 was new and people were playing a lot of multiplayer games. But I guess better late than never.
Well, the idea is that you can, if you see someone playing Call of Duty on Xbox Live and you're at your PC, then you can just stream Call of Duty on your PC.
Well, so that's the next thing. Yeah, is they showed game streaming, so you can you can launch games on your Xbox and stream them to your PC and watch them on the big screen.
only over a local area network.
Yes, well, that's to be expected.
And I believe I'm not sure if wireless works.
I wonder if VPN would be able to get around that limitation.
You can almost certainly VPN around that if you were a crazy person, but the experience is going to be bad.
No doubt. I'm surprised that the LAN experience will be good enough.
So we've
Yeah.
done a fair amount of, like, I've used the Steambox streaming in-house, and as long as you're on wired or have a real Wi-Fi network, it's
You can play a shooter or a racing game, no problem.
it depends on the game.
So think of it this way: when you're streaming, and this is the reverse of the streaming stuff that SteamOS and Nvidia stuff can do. Instead of piping PC games rendering on the PC side over to your living room wirelessly or over a wired connection, it's the other way around. But games on the Xbox are designed with latency in mind, multiplayer games. So you're adding another layer of latency, but it's just think of having like a slightly worse internet connection,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would
which is
think,
fine because it's not Twitch as a desktop PC game.
So even in the early days of the Steam streaming, with multiplayer, well, with single player games, it was fine. Even racing games, like you could play Need for Speed or whatever, you kind of adapt to the slight amount of latency that it adds. Online shooters were rough, but that may have changed in the 6 months that I haven't used Steam in-home streaming very much. If you have a wired network, it's going to be great. It's going to be pretty good, I would think, especially since on a console you're talking about a controlled streaming source, which is the hard part, I think. On the PC, there's a lot of variables, including like video drivers and stuff like that change constantly.
This feature makes me, it certainly is something that appeals to me, makes me want to get an Xbox One a little bit more. I have my Xbox out in the living room, which is just always filled with kids. Can't play my M-rated games whenever I want to. So being able to stream them back into my office,
Yeah.
it sounds like a win.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably this is more appealing to me than most people, because most people probably have a living room and a den, and there's a TV in both places, and the kids can take one room, or you and your wife can separate. We have one TV in a small Northern California house, and not having to buy a second Xbox to sit in my office if I want to play Sunset Overdrive or something is nice.
But now, will the Xbox be able to handle, for example, someone watching video on
That's the big
living
question.
room and then you playing a game?
Yeah.
Like Wii style, almost.
I
Wii U style.
would think so, given the virtual machine nature of the Xbox OS. But that remains to be seen.
Right. And maybe not even watching video, but even using the Xbox UI for watching TV.
Yeah. So, I mean, and since our TV goes through the Xbox, if Gina can't watch TV while I'm streaming the Xbox to the other room, this is a very low value feature to me. They talked about DirectX 12 a little bit, which is at this point not worth talking about.
Did you see the tech demo?
Which one?
The one by Future Mark.
The Fable thing?
No, the Future
Oh, no,
Mark
that's
one.
my stream crapped out, so I didn't get to see
Okay,
it.
I mean, it was completely,
It's fake.
it could be, it might as well be. It's interesting, though. They found something the DX11 doesn't do well, and they showed it off.
Which
they compared
was?
it to DX12. They added more and more detail to the identical environments, one running DX11, one running DX12.
It's like Inception.
It was very much like that. This camera is just zooming through this cityscape. There's a cityscape on both sides of the screen, top and bottom, and more buildings and details added every frame.
Tessellation.
And then basically the DX11 starts to chug, and then it can't handle it, and it stops.
So this is one of those things that makes me a little bit crazy. This is a fair demo. Like I've seen a lot of really bad demos for post DX9 DirectX stuff where they're like, we couldn't do God rays before in DX9, but now all of a sudden with DirectX 10, magically we can. With I think DirectX 10, once we reach DirectX 10, shader languages and the APIs that you use to talk to the video card were computationally complete. The things that have changed since then are that they've found efficiencies and better ways to do things that make them more able to accelerate stuff like tessellation in hardware.
They talked about opening the video hardware up to the developers a little more than they have in the past.
Well, they have to do that because of the competition from things like AMD's
and stuff.
The lower level API. No, even more than that, Mantle and the lower level APIs that AMD and Nvidia are pushing. That is unsurprising.
I until Carmack weighs in on this,
I don't think Carmack gives a shit anymore.
You're probably
He's
right.
working on that thing.
I don't know. Maybe he does. I'm sure he has opinions.
And then they showed cross-device multiplayer, which I think I played Shadowrun with both of you. Both of you. Do you remember
What
that?
a great game.
Before TF2,
Man,
TF2 before TF2.
That game was so amazing playing against people using gamepads with a mouse and keyboard.
Well,
when
they dumbed down the PC experience.
It didn't
a lot
matter.
Also,
we were still godlike. It was the best I've ever been at video games.
it's an interesting exercise in balance.
That's right. So what? Are they promising every
No.
PC game?
I select stuff, it seems like.
And Fable is the one they demoed.
Yeah, so Fable's a co-op type game, so
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. Like, and frankly, it wouldn't have surprised me the way he was going with that talk. If they had said, "Hey, by the way, if you buy a game on the Xbox, you get the PC version." Like that just comes with it.
That would be nice.
I like
Right.
that.
That would be a nice thing.
Or
to
vice
add.
versa.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so that's I think all of the Windows.
As launched through Xbox Live, that would make sense. If you can only run one instance at once.
Well, but once they showed the streaming, then you don't need that anymore, theoretically, because you can just stream it to your PC and then your Xbox One games work on the PC. They showed the Microsoft Surface Hub, which is a conference room thing for big businesses. It looks like it was designed by people who are really good at taking lots and lots of meetings and doing like conference calls and stuff like that. It is a smart TV with cameras and microphones and speakers and sensors and all depth sensors and all sorts of crazy stuff.
Well, it's Perceptive Pixel, which Microsoft bought in 2012.
What's
this
that
is
mean?
It's a company.
I think James Hahn. Remember that TED Talk that was done in like the first TED Talk, and it was amazing, that wall. And he got like 4 guys on stage that do the wall touching and moving It was the first like Minority Report style, real time multi-touch surface. And we're talking about back in like 2006, before iPhone, before multi-touch.
It was when they first started posting TED Talks online. Yeah.
but it was,
Was it before Microsoft announced Surface? Like the first Surface?
yes, yes. This is 2006.
No.
Well, it
That
wouldn't have
first
been.
Surface was
Surface was around then.
first. I saw the first Surface when I went to go look at Vista in Redmond.
So regardless, they bought the company a few years ago, and this is what's come of that, which is a return to the Surface name to what it was. Surface
Yeah.
originally was, which was a multi-touch Surface device for collaboration. But instead of for the
Pens, too.
home, it's for the office, and it's an 84-inch
4K.
4K TV with lots of input points and Skype integration and
And a stylus.
stylus.
It's it seems like a whole computer inside too. It was
Yeah.
running multiple apps in Windows and all that stuff. Like it looked really neat. It's not the kind of thing we usually talk about here, but it looked neat.
If you and the person you're video conferencing both have one, then that's great.
It's yeah, exactly. But it's one of those things that like when I've taken meetings at Microsoft in Redmond, you go into these conference rooms, and usually there's in the old days at least, there was a screen by the door that showed the schedule for the conference room that was booked in Outlook. Like this is the kind of thing that your whole organization has to be hooked into Exchange to really use.
Right. So this is Microsoft saying, yeah, obviously this makes perfect sense.
We need this.
Yeah.
We're going to build it for us.
Right.
Might as well make it a product.
Well, if you watch like TV and like not exactly late night, but when you see weird ads, so a lot of those ads are for these big TVs for collaborative working.
Really?
Like, I think when we watch sports, I've seen at least 2 different companies sell these big drawing board digital,
Like Cisco Umi and stuff like that, or
not even the big
Okay.
company names, but it is a boutique market. And Microsoft, which has done Microsoft Research, they produce those videos. There's like looking to the future videos. You can see in those videos everything that they show is a project that is being worked on, or the end point of, and you can see this project. This is one of those projects where, because it's a big display, almost as big as a real person. If you build Skype into it, you can have almost like telepresence, fixed wall telepresence.
so the really interesting thing about this, like when you go to the Microsoft conference rooms and you sit down, they always had this giant pigtail of like 6 cables coming out for VGA, HDMI, DVI, dual link DVI, DisplayPort, mini HDMI, all the different stuff that you need to make sure you can connect any laptop that's in the Windows ecosystem, or Macs for that matter, to the projection system in the conference room. And it seems like they've built applications that'll run on all the different OSs that are out there, supports Miracast, so you can stream from any Miracast enabled OS. So that anybody who's sitting in the room can put up what's on their screen on the screen, and like that stuff. That sounds super interesting if you spend a lot of time sitting in meetings. I try to avoid sitting in lots of meetings, but I understand that that's a large part of business in America today, and I saw when I posted about this on Twitter, a lot of people responded, "Yeah, I depending on how much this costs, we're going to put this in all of our conference rooms."
Really?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you think about it. We used to have to do fairly regular when we were at Future. We used to have to do fairly regular conference calls with folks in the UK, and that was always a holy living nightmare of getting the dumb proprietary thing that we had bought, the company had bought, in one conference room, talking to the one in the other country, and then it would drop out, and we'd end up just Skyping each other and everybody huddling around a laptop because it was like that. This is a place. Being the company that glues all the other stuff together is a very viable approach for Microsoft to take, and they're in a position to do it. It's a hard thing to do, but with the stuff that they have and the tools that they have, they should be able to make that happen. I thought it was a neat product.
What's your price guess?
I bet it's 10, 25 grand. I bet it's really fucking expensive.
Wow.
Yeah, I bet. Like if you look at what Cisco's Umi, which was just video conferencing, started at, that started at like 100 grand, say 3 to 5 years ago. Eventually, they ended up selling it for $1,000 with a $600 a year plan attached to it. I think that this will be in that you're a business, figure it's 20 grand for each conference room, unless you buy 10, and then it's 15 grand for each conference room. Yeah, I mean we're not going to put one in here. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that it's not. It's outside of our price range. Yeah. The big thing that they showed. I mean, okay, so the Windows 10 thing is something that's going to touch all of us in some way, shape, or form,
whether you like it or not.
I think it's something to like. It can't be worse than Windows 8.
I'm going to get it.
Yeah, it's free upgrade.
Yeah. Windows Holographic, which was their one more thing equivalent. And this is a project that they've been working on seemingly for a really long time. I would guess it started Microsoft Research and then it graduated. It's actual augmented reality from what they showed. It's a big pair of glasses that they call, I think, the HoloLens, which is a really unfortunate name. But it wraps around your whole head, like Lobot style whole head wraparound with Back to the Future looking glasses in front. From
Self-contained computer.
Right.
Not a tethered.
Wi-Fi connected, part of the Microsoft ecosystem, presumably with Cortana and all that stuff.
So you have IMUs, you have gyros, you have.
I would guess that they have a depth camera on the front.
There's definitely sensors, cameras in the front. There's depth cameras in the front. So you think of like the Structure 3D scanner where you can map rooms. This will do that as well.
Or the Kinect.
But the display technology is projected onto the screen, onto the visor, the transparent visor.
You're wavering out.
So you can see digital assets presented to you in real time, spatially.
So Wired had seemingly a pre-brief and a big feature about it. I haven't had time to read the whole Wired feature yet, but it seems like from what they said on stage and the bits that I skimmed through the Wired thing that they're using DLP projectors and like mirrored lenses lenses with a way to project into the lens to present a very high definition, real looking image onto the real world. At least according, so there's two phases to this talk. One was a thing where they talked over a bunch of pre-rendered obviously pre-rendered video demos where they were showing things like a Minecraft world overlaid in a living room where bits of the Minecraft world were on top of tables and chairs and all that stuff. And the person wearing the glasses was actually reaching out and interacting with the Minecraft world.
It was like the entire living room was covered in Minecraft.
Yes.
On all different planes.
Right. Or, a wall would look like it was a display, peering into the Minecraft world.
He exploded one of his own walls with Minecraft TNT and opened up a portal into the Minecraft
Don't try walking
universe.
into it.
Yeah, right.
They talked about JPL. They've been working with JPL, who runs the Curiosity rover, Curiosity and Pathfinder and all the other rovers on. Is Pathfinder a rover? I don't know. The rovers that are currently on Mars, and they use that along with the high resolution 3D imagery that comes out of Curiosity. Curiosity is the current one. It's Odyssey and what was the Spirit? Spirit's gone.
Yep.
Anyway, so data that shows the sphere around the Curiosity rover. So people were able to put this on, and it seemed as if they were standing in a room that was on Mars.
Yeah.
So in the video presentations, which are on YouTube everywhere, the people working on this project talk about augmented reality as a way to get past the glass display that has been on our screen for so long, whether that's your TV or your desktop.
So getting rid of Windows.
And this is they build it as the future of Windows. So you can put literal virtual windows like that Minecraft window into another world, into on any surface in the real world, your wall,
Right.
your table, your desk.
And they showed like video conference windows and stuff like that, literally popping up on the wall beside a TV or something.
And I think that's not necessarily the best idea to use augmented reality. They did show some.
Well, what do you think is the best idea?
I think
if you don't
it's a
that's
complement to. So when you think of augmented reality, which in the past couple of years, Google Glass is a form of augmented reality.
No, Google Glass is a heads-up display. It's not augmented reality.
Okay, augmented reality, for example, through a smartphone, where we've seen the demos. Bill Gates did this demo in Vegas at CES, where you lift up the smartphone because of the accelerometer data. It tells you where the closest Starbucks is, or tells you where on the map. And Yelp, the monocle app on Yelp, and a ton of apps now through the display. It's meant to orient, impose information onto the real world, where you use it in outdoors. Like, I guess you see a lot of those demos, information about a person that you're talking to hovering above them, that kind of stuff. And I think that has a lot of challenges in both the social acceptance and just the pure sheer hardware.
You mean the glasses, or like wearing glasses in
Wearing
public?
glasses, and also the technical limitations of using this in outdoor scenarios. I think that augmented reality can work best when it's a complement to your existing workflow. You're not going to get people to stop using tablets and phones and TVs and computer monitors, and those things are great for their reasons, but you can use augmented reality to enhance the space around that. So I can have a 24-inch or 30-inch computer monitor or a laptop I'm working with on a table, and then wear these glasses and then enhance either information on there to make it 3D or around it and change your workspace.
So
which is a lot of what they're showing.
They showed mostly. I think they showed all inside stuff. I don't think we saw any outside stuff at all.
That's right. They showed almost all inside stuff, which I think is the right thing to do.
They showed inside stuff with bright ambient lighting. It looked like the demo that they showed on stage. So they did a live demo. Presumably, it seemed like a live demo where they had one person. The place where AR shines is to give you shared virtual experiences where everyone's perspective is correct in the real world, right? So the thing that they showed on stage, they showed two things. One was that they showed Terry Myerson standing on a pedestal doing a little talk that was probably pretty obviously pre-recorded, like inside a 3D scanner, if I had to guess. And they had a shoulder-mounted camera on someone's, the camera person was holding, and then the person running the demo was wearing the glasses. Right. So you could actually see what she was seeing, but you were seeing it from the camera's perspective. And the person was kind of poorly laid over the real world, where he was standing on a pedestal, but then he kind of drifted off over time.
Like QR codes. Right.
Kind of like AR-based QR codes, yes.
Right. So imagine if the three of us were all wearing HoloLens and we could all see on the same spot collaboratively, a 3D model over a QR code, and we still had our displays. We could be.
Didn't seem like they had a QR code on that bench, though, for what it's worth, because that makes it a lot easier. You can do that on a 3DS. It's not a big deal. The second thing that they showed was a shared workspace environment where she was working on building a 3D model, and this was the epitome of the bad tech demo. But she assembled a 3D model of a quadcopter, and the camera was looking at it from a different perspective, but could still see the same thing. So conceivably, the camera could have walked over right up to the model, looked at it closely, made changes, and given you a shared experience where you're working with complex files. Like it's not a far stretch from the admittedly bad tech demo to Autodesk 20 versions from now being a thing that Jeremy, you and I load up together, and we can walk around and talk about an architectural model as if we were all walking through it.
And we saw something similar to that. We've seen things with the STEM system. People trying 3D modeling in 3D.
Well, and Cast AR.
And Cast AR, and also the Z-Sense or whatever that HP has one. But the one where you wear the 3D glasses, you have a stereoscopic workspace.
But this is a big difference.
It is a difference, but I think a big problem with that stuff, and it could be because of the accuracy of the systems, the user interfaces are clunky as hell. Even in their perfect idealized demos, we're talking about giant, big, bright orb-like buttons.
Or somebody holding their hand out straight out for 5 minutes while the entire time they're working on this thing.
And I don't think this is a interactive. I don't think we're going to see in the first few generations practical interactions with that space, physical interactions. I think it's more information, useful information, and shared information to be absorbed.
Well, Here's the thing that's interesting to. So there's two things that were really interesting for me about this. One was that they were overlaying, because they weren't trying to project onto the real world, they were overlaying stuff in the real world in a much more seamless way, at least in the pre-rendered demos, obviously.
Is there eye tracking?
Didn't say. They didn't give very many technical details. Most
Eye
of what
tracking would be really useful.
it seems like they were doing hand tracking using the depth sensor in front of the camera.
Because you
on the front of
imagine,
it.
okay, like the Terry Myerson hologram, right? The talking small person, which you could also then
Help
project
me, Obi-Wan
forward.
Kenobi, you're my only hope.
Cortana. It's
Yeah.
actually Cortana as in the video game.
Yes.
Which this all seems to be like a digital assistant, right? So this headset, HoloLens, maps the room. It knows what it thinks surfaces are, the floor, categorizing desk surfaces, so it knows to maybe place a hologram on a desk, what it thinks is a desk. And then if it has eye tracking, which would be really useful, it knows where you're looking, and then it would project that virtual assistant or the virtual person up on the side of that part of the table.
So that the interesting thing to me is this, that they were able to overlay this stuff in the real world, or that's what they're claiming to be able to do. Most of the stuff that we've seen up to this point that uses augmented reality is either janky, like the Monocle app on Yelp, where it kind of bounces around and is generally terrible, or limited to a specific environment like Cast AR, where they're projecting onto a reflective surface because they don't have the lens technology to do that. The fact that it seems like they're using DLP for the projectors is interesting because it means that stuff looks more real. We've seen that with the Avegant glasses, where the DLP projection stuff really benefits from the lack of screen door effect, and it looks much higher resolution than it actually is.
Well, those are projecting straight onto your retina. The Avegant stuff, right? Straight onto your retina.
Yes.
Whereas this is projecting straight onto the screen.
onto a reflective
Onto the visor.
screen.
So
Presumably, they didn't say. It's
That's
unclear,
true.
and I'm extrapolating from what do you call it? From the Wired article mostly.
I think that one of the cool things, this is obviously a very visual interface, and Microsoft has an opportunity to present its services visually in a way that Google and Apple are limited by the desktop and the phone and the tablet. And so I think that something like a Cortana being Google Now or Siri, but having a visual connection to the user, I think that's really powerful, and that's something that we shouldn't underestimate.
the pre-rendered demos were absolutely amazing. And I was kind of surprised that you would show this kind of thing so late in a talk, because this is the kind of thing that might actually change the world, change the way that people interact with technology. But when they went to the live demo, it became clear why they showed it so late, which is that they can't do what they showed in those
not
pre-rendered
live
demos.
with the device they have. I mean, presumably not with the device they have right now.
Yeah, but I doesn't. If that's where they are right now, we're not going to see the shipping device, which I guess is going to be this year.
So the big questions for me are: how much of your field of view can they project into? Like can they do the thing that they showed where Minecraft is over the whole world, or are you going to get a square inside your field of view that's where the virtual world is?
The glasses look pretty humongous. Looks like it's pretty wide field of view. My concern is more, can they actually do a 3D scan of the environment and map objects onto the environment that quickly and in real time?
We have stuff that you can do that.
You feed, but that's not smart. Like the stuff you can map. Yes, you can map the environment, but the parsing of that environment.
The
to
Occipital
know
guys have
what's-
demos that let you put virtual objects into the real environment using 3D mapping on the
But you
iPad.
put that object. It's not doing it automatically.
Well, no, it interacts with the object. So there's a fake ball that a fake dog chases on the floor, or you can. I think they even had one. There's a real pink ball that a virtual dog will chase if you throw it. Like that stuff works. It was.
Can
rough.
I sit and work on my motorcycle and have a little window down there with a guy who reaches in and shows me which way to turn the screw?
Well, so the demo that they gave of the woman doing the plumbing work with somebody on the other end watching what she was doing and telling her what to do was like, that stuff feels not feasible for a multitude of reasons. First off, I can't imagine wearing those glasses all day as big as they are. They were, like you said, humongous. They wrap around your entire
Well, just
head.
from a technical standpoint.
I'm sure that the weight will come down, the bulk will come down.
I think
over time.
I think that's one of the more likely demos that you would be able to technically do.
Do what?
Where if you were wearing HoloLens and you looked at something, pipes or something.
But nobody's plumbing
Right?
stuff is actually that open.
No. But the demo was someone on the other end looking at the same image on their surface and drawing
Right.
And then what they drew would
Is
get
overlaid.
imposed on what you see.
But
and
how did they
it's the
draw?
same video
How did they
source.
draw in Z space?
Well, they were drawing in 2D, and then that gets transferred to 3D.
Superimposed.
Yeah, but how does the system know
It
where
puts
to
it
put
in
that?
the same
So
place
that's-
in relation to where your
So
head is, I assume. but I
maybe
don't
only a
know.
2D drawing,
It's
maybe
a-
only arrows.
It's best not to think about it too
Yeah,
much.
maybe
Jeremy,
not
'cause it's a
actual
tech
circles.
demo.
But
The Minecraft thing. I mean, is that going to be possible?
I
They
mean,
said, he said Minecraft.
that's an
they explicitly said Minecraft.
Yes,
was it.
and I believe it. We'll see
they
that.
showed it.
We'll see that on a single plane, probably.
Yeah.
No doubt.
I
and
agree.
they were supposed to be able to play that today. And I'll be very surprised if you can move your environment around and change your environment, add a chair, move a table, and have that game today, maybe even this year, function the way that it did in that pre-rendered video.
And my skepticism is absolutely in the when you say change that space and change that game and interact with it. I think AR as a way to display information, but once you put your hands in there, and once there has to be accuracy in actually manipulating the hologram, then I think we run into a lot of problems.
I think you're making a lot of assumptions on something that we haven't actually seen in person. Like I don't think they know at this point. Microsoft has to know better after the skateboard debacle with the Kinect. Look, you can scan your skateboard into the Kinect. By the way, same guy. The guy who did the demo for the holograph stuff was the scan your skateboard in with the Kinect guy. I think that they have to know if they're going to show what they showed in that pre-release stuff, the pre-rendered stuff. They have to actually have a way to do that.
Great.
Well, the
by
good
the
thing
end
is
of
we'll
the
do
year.
it
That means
by the
when
end of
Because
this
they
year.
said by the end of this year.
When
They
they
said-
don't follow through, you're going to be even more disappointed than I am because I'm being skeptical, and you're a believer.
I'm an optimist. I think
What do you think the price is going to be?
I don't care. We'll find out.
If it, if
I
it,
mean,
Of course, it
if
matters.
it does what they did in that pre-rendered
Yeah.
stuff,
it's not going to matter.
take my money.
Yeah, I'll buy that instead of a laptop. I can use a 2-year-old laptop.
Absolutely no way. That is the fundamental problem. Is I don't think this is a replacement. This should not be. I don't think AR should be designed as a replacement for
Look,
the laptop, for the phone, for
I'm
the
going to
tablet.
go ahead and tell you anything AR or VR that you buy in first, whether you're talking about Oculus or Samsung Gear or this Windows Holographic, which, just to be clear, we haven't talked about that, is a stupid fucking name because these are not holograms.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Right.
Yeah,
That
that bugged me.
This is augmented reality. I think they feel like that's probably something people can't understand, so they're calling it holograms.
Yeah.
He must have said hologram 85 or 90 times during that 10-minute demo, and it is holograms are 3D images. This is a 3D image, but it's binocular. It's augmented reality. It is not
Same thing
holograms.
with 3D TV.
Why? What? Those aren't holograms either.
Those aren't holograms either. It's,
Right.
it's exactly the same as 3D TV. What they're doing.
Yes.
Yeah.
All they've reappropriated a name that actually has meaning instead of making up a new bullshit name. Anyway, anything you buy that's VR, AR, stupid holograms, any of that stuff is going to be, for the first 5 years it's out, people are going to be figuring out how it works and how to use it. You're buying beta products, so that's why I say it doesn't matter what it
Virtual
costs.
reality. Nope. It won't matter this year.
Okay.
You know,
Anyway,
game devs are going to have a real leg up with this tech, though, and they're going to be able to develop.
I think games are going to be the first apps we see for it.
Yeah,
too.
sure, but anybody who wants to make an augmented reality app, not necessarily even a game, they're going to be hiring game developers to do that.
Well, so the interesting thing that he said during this demo is that all Universal apps will be able to draw canvases on using the HoloLens. So if you have a Windows Universal app and you've built it for phones, PC, whatever, it'll just you seems like it will be an easy transition to make it work with the glasses. So I don't know. I'm interested. I really want to try it out. I'm hoping they'll bring it to GDC next month.
It builds in April.
Yeah, so we'll see. I guess that's it for the Microsoft stuff. Was there anything else out of the Q&A? I was in the car by the time they were doing that. It seemed like the big thing was that there's not going to be a subscription pricing, or they didn't actively say there's no subscription pricing model. They said they're not changing the biz model for Windows, so which is actually kind of untrue because if they're not charging for upgrades, then they're already changing the biz model. But we'll get to that later. This week, Google, or late last week, I guess, Google killed the Glass Explorer program. So it's funny that we're talking about augmented reality and glasses and things that make people hate you. They did make a point in the Windows thing to say that there's no camera on this. It's depth camera only. Or they didn't say depth camera only, but they did say there was no camera.
Yeah.
So Google posted a blog post last week, a Google Plus post, which is fitting, that basically explained that they're killing the Glass Explorer program, which was how you got early access to Project Glass. That's how you had to apply for a long time to get into the Google Glass program.
And then they let anyone in.
And then they let anyone in for a while.
Sorry for anyone who bought it a month ago.
If you bought it for $1,500 a month ago, you're probably still in the 30-day return cycle. So
What did the price go down to?
$1,500.
It went down to $1,500.
No, it was already $50. It never went down.
Oh, okay.
It's always $1,500.
Suckers.
So the tone, that's not very nice, Norm. Basically, the tone of the post said Google is graduating from Google X, which is their research.
To Google X.
No, from.
Glasses. You're right.
Glass is
You're
graduating from Google X. Google X is their kind of moonshot, crazy idea division, which is where things like the self-driving car and the Project Loon internet balloons came from. It's going to roll under Tony Fidel's group, or under Tony Fidel's care, with much of the team that ran under Google X. And they basically said interest in wearables has exploded. We want to make this a real thing, so we're going to take it out of Google X and focus on what's coming next. If you're listening to this now, it's too late to buy them. That was on January 19th. That ended. They're leaving the forums and all the old stuff open so that people who have bought Glass can continue to communicate with each other. Presumably no software updates for Glass Explorer Edition from this point forward. And if you bought Glass, then they're going to support the hardware under the terms of the initial warranty, which probably has expired for most of the people who bought Glass already. So the post was real rosy and like, hey, things are great. We're doing awesome. But at the same time, the other side of it is that support from developers has waned. Google's kind of slowed the pace of updates and stuff like that to Glass over the last several months. And it seems like a real mixed message, right?
I mean, the promise of Glass, other than the camera on it, was this ambient information, which you're getting from
your smart
Android Wear
or Pebble or whatever else. Yeah. And they've actually removed some functionality. So I wrote a thing about it. It's on the site. You can find it. I think that they've kind of fucked up. I think that the way they rolled out Glass by charging $1,500 for it and by making it an exclusive community and making people apply and making it an elite thing, kind of helped contribute to the tainted public perception of Glass, which is
help contribute to something that was maybe already going to happen regardless.
I think it almost ensured that it was going to happen, but yes.
If it was going to be a good product, I think that high barrier to entry for something that potentially is going to be great and change the world is not a bad strategy. It's just that I think that they underestimated the resistance.
So there's really two worlds for Glass too. There's the consumer world where it's just some dude walking around CES or the airport or whatever taking pictures of everything he wants. And then there's the applications, which they had a Glass at Work program where if you were working in a hospital or in medical stuff or in firefighting software, you could apply for that. And then at that point give people that may need ambient access to information in a hands-free way access to that stuff, which is like when you look at the stuff that came out of that is even coming out of that still. I think that's going to continue, and it's really interesting. Like like imagine if you're a firefighter, you're going through a building, and all of a sudden
I've seen those Verizon commercials. Those products have existed, and Glass is a lightweight, more elegant version of that you use for a very specific amount of time. You don't need to have it on all day,
right?
And if that's the future of Glass, and that's what it ends up being, then that's fantastic.
But Glass wasn't augmented reality. It was a Pebble on a pair of glasses, basically. Maybe an Android Wear watch on a pair of glasses. And they even removed functionality from it over the last year or so. So it's farewell, Godspeed.
I think the
Glass.
biggest problem with glasses is that it didn't fulfill any kind of promise of augmented reality, which is what it was marketed as. A lot of people thought it was going to be able to project anything you wanted in front of you.
So that first video, like they never showed augmented reality stuff.
They showed directions, which is a form of augmented reality.
But they didn't show it overlaying. They didn't show like a line overlaying the sidewalk. They showed directions in the top right corner.
But a different degree of augmented.
They didn't do a good enough job illustrating what it would do because there was a lot of confusion. And then it had this camera that was pointed at anybody that you ever spoke to when you were wearing it. And I feel like that changed the social dynamic so drastically that the payoff, having whatever augmented reality that you had, which was a little screen in the corner, wasn't worth that trade-off.
But at the same time, they weren't using the camera for augmented reality stuff.
No, I understand.
Right? Like they
I get it, but if you're talking to me and there's a camera pointed at me, everything's different.
Well, it's the same as me doing this to you, and you're going to behave differently when I do that.
Precisely.
The thing that they made two mistakes, and on that front, they should have put an indicator light on the front of the camera to let people know when it was active.
Yeah.
It's foolish that they didn't do that. And they or here's I'm aiming at Norm. Or they should have put a door, a thing you could just flip closed so that the camera's covered. I understand why they wouldn't, because if you are talking about something that is eventually going to morph into an augmented reality device, the ability to turn off the camera or to have to show when the camera's on all the time makes that much less useful as an augmented reality device. But at the same time, people were really freaked out
RGB
by it.
LED, blue means passive data
That is
gathering,
too complex.
red means recording.
Maybe. Anyway, glass is dead. It's going to continue. Tony Fadell, the guy who invented the iPod scroll wheel and the Nest, is in charge of it now. I'm interested to see what they do next. I think they have to call it something else, and they have to come up with a much less obtrusive device.
Like HoloLens, which, again, the demo mostly showed indoor stuff. If glass pivots into a device that you only wear in the home and works with, for example, Nest products and smart home things.
Why do you insist on only in the home?
I think that socially it's more acceptable. Day-to-day use, it's maybe something that's more functional and practical.
But eventually, don't you agree we're heading outside with these things?
Eventually, maybe, but you start with the social acceptance, getting people accustomed to UI, accustomed to reading this type of interface in the home.
But I mean, the thing that was most useful about glass was when you're in an unfamiliar circumstance. When we're in a city that we're not familiar with, and you needed directions, you could tap the thing and say, "Hey, how do I get to there?"
The phone
and it gives you directions.
Right, but it didn't supplant wasn't any more useful than looking at your phone.
I think it's much less dangerous to glance up and to the right and get a vocal notification directly in your ear than to be driving with your phone when you're trying to do turn-by-turn directions and stuff like that.
I'm curious to see what Tony Fadell is it
Fadell.
Fadell? I'm curious to see what he does because he makes very stylish devices.
Yeah.
And if it was a driving, that's something that you just put in the car. I mean,
And now that we're
talking about a rear view mirror enhancement that solves that problem.
With Microsoft's new announcement, I feel like it can only be full field of view or augmented reality.
Driving, walking, biking, Norm. I mean, I don't have a augmented reality thing in my car, in my bicycle.
It's a very niche product,
I don't know, maybe.
niche use case.
So yeah, that's glass, rip glass. A lot of people really hated you. A smaller number of people liked you a lot.
Yeah.
Probably the last time we'll talk about this for a while.
Those barges.
Those barges were the Google Glass rollout induction centers.
Wow.
If you complain too much about glass on Google products, then they took you there until you loved glass.
Do you agree we're all going to be wearing these things eventually?
I think that we'll be wearing something.
Yeah.
I don't think that necessarily it's going to be the same thing that we wear for every context or situation.
Augmented reality glasses, I mean.
Or some type of wearable.
Yeah.
I think you wear a watch for some things. You use like you use a desktop and laptop and your TV differently. I think
augmented reality glasses will be as prevalent as phones.
I think.
I just don't know when.
I mean, here's the thing: is if you could get that kind of display in a pair of contact lenses, everyone would wear it right now, right? Like there would be no hesitation.
Yeah.
You got to watch Black Mirror, Jeremy.
I will.
It's
now
all
that you
about
told
that
me
stuff.
about it. You should read Freedom TM, Norm.
I hadn't heard of it.
That's the Daniel Suarez thing.
Yeah, it's his
I'll check
second
that
book.
out.
Second book from the Demon series.
So, if you look at those glasses that we saw from Sony at CES, that clip-on thing, they had a clip-on heads-up display type thing, so very similar to what glass ended up being. It's tiny in comparison. Both the crystal that sits in front of your field of view was tiny and rode closer to you, and the thing that hooks onto the side of your glasses was much, much smaller. It was just a prototype. There's a video of it on the site now if you want to check it out. But it's that stuff is like the technology to make that less obtrusive is getting better. The social stuff we have to work out. I think you're right though. People wouldn't have been anywhere near as pissed off if there hadn't been a camera. And given the quality of the camera that was even on the second rev of the Glass Explorer edition, there was no reason to put a camera on there. The pictures you were taking with it weren't worth saving for the most part. It was a really crazy wide angle lens. and it wasn't a particularly good, like compared to even an iPhone camera from 2 generations before. It was bad. So yeah, like they didn't know what that thing was. They put it out and they see what people use it for, and I guess we'll go from there. You saw the Nvidia GeForce 960 this morning. This is a new mid-range GPU, right?
This is being launched this morning. They rolled up 980 last year, 970, and this is probably the one that most people use their 60 series cards, whether it's a 660 or a 760 or 560 even, and it's $200 card that I think is going to sell pretty well.
That sounds like a great price.
$200 card. It's Maxwell, low power, 120 watt. They demoed, League of Legends and all. It's a MOBA. If you play MOBAs and that's all you play, then this is a card that's not going to be too expensive. You can overclock it, and you don't need to spend $500. It's not going to be a card that I think you would want to buy if you plan on getting an Oculus, though, at the end of the year.
I wonder what it compares to. Did they talk about what older card this compares to?
Yeah, I mean, it's people who have the 660. This is their natural upgrade. They know people in that market, whether you're at a internet cafe in China or you're a college gamer here, you usually buy every 2 years.
Yeah. Is this more like a 780 comparison, though?
Oh, you mean in terms of like how
much horsepower, yeah.
Horsepower? I think overclocked, yeah. Overclocked, I would say, it's tough to say for games. They really talked about their features, which I think that, engine dependent.
Right.
Disney showed a robot that makes patterns on beaches. This seems like the kind of thing.
Yeah.
This seems like the kind of thing that, like, if you have, say, a giant resort in an area with lots of fake sand beaches in,
or
say, Central Florida. Yeah, or you're on a boat and you want to, say, welcome Disney cruise visitors on your private island in the Caribbean. This would be a great thing to have.
I'd say you need one of these.
Yeah.
It's right now they're paying a small team of people to go out and do that every day. So now all those people,
I think it's the first step. I mean, we don't see moving robots in public. And this is a gateway to that. You become more comfortable in controlled environments like Disneyland and resorts.
They come out of the ocean first, onto the beaches.
I don't think they come out of it.
They
do not come out of the ocean.
What about the people who raked those patterns into the sand before, Norm? Those were trained artisans.
No one actually did the patterns.
Who's next? The ice sculptors?
Possibly.
We're going to have some chainsaw-wielding robots? That's a great idea.
It's like the Fifth Element. It's like that robot who comes out and it creates order out of chaos. You knock the glass off the table, and then the robot comes out and cleans the glass. You have to create destruction for there to be order. Zorg Industries.
I just don't take my ice sculptors away. We didn't talk about the ice sculptures at CES this year, but there were some crazy fucking ice sculptures at that Pepcom event on Monday night.
I only saw the one.
It's like an 8-foot tall Lenovo ice sculpture. It looked like a bar. It was a bar made of ice that had Lenovo carved
Could you
into
pour
the front.
liquid through it?
I don't know.
Luge?
That's a thing people do, right?
That is
Seems
absolutely
like
a thing people
at
do.
bars.
Oh, that's what it's called?
A luge. Like
Yeah.
luge.
So it cools your beverage for you without putting too much water in, theoretically.
I like that.
A few things douchier.
Oh,
Ice luge.
Never mind. I don't like it.
Steven Soderbergh released a recut version of 2001. Did you watch I watched the first maybe 40 minutes of this the other night.
I didn't have 110 minutes to spare.
What? What?
So
what kind of audacity is that?
He is retired from filmmaking and has gone crazy, apparently. But he did a cut of Raiders of the Lost Ark that he basically just turned it black and white and took out all the audio. So it's only score to just show, here are the things that they wanted you to be looking at. It was an interesting filmmaking exercise, right? Here's the stuff that Spielberg wanted you to look at when you were watching Raiders, which I thought was really fascinating. I didn't watch the whole thing, but I watched favorite scenes. The 2001 cut, he changed the structure of the film fairly dramatically and started introducing, just as a sanity check here, in the Kubrick version in the real version of 2001, HAL 9000 doesn't make an appearance until the discovery, until they're on the ship.
The third act, the third section of the movie.
Like, you don't see him until they're on the spaceship heading to Jupiter, right?
I thought that there was an office scene where you do see him.
Oh, you're right. When he's like in the background.
Yeah.
But I think that's Sal. I think that's not Hal.
Oh, okay.
I think Sal is the other.
In the moon sequence.
Yes.
The best sequence of the movie. My favorite sequence of the movie.
So, in this, every time you see the monolith, there's like a shock cut to a HAL 9000 faceplate, and then it goes away. You just keep seeing him pop up when the apes are looking at him, when they see him when the light hits the monolith on the moon,
I
et
don't
cetera,
like
et
that.
cetera. It's a little weird.
A little on the nose.
They took out so anyway, I'll get to that in a minute. They took out the sequence with the Pan Am flight attendant
Oh, my
walking
favorite.
around the
What?
circle.
My
They
favorite.
cut that.
and the phone call,
The phone call's gone.
the original iPad.
It's much that first act is much faster, which appeals to me as a modern film viewer.
Right.
What's the point of the edit? If his Indiana Jones had the point of educating you on what Spielberg wanted you to see.
I think he wanted to cut 2001.
Okay.
I mean, he has his own inclinations as an editor and as a director, and it's you're right. The point is weird because his source material is the original 180 minutes or 150 minutes or whatever it was footage. There's not like he has more to work with, and he's adding deleted stuff in. He's just condensing and rearranging.
So, do you want to read what he said in the blog post that went with it?
I would just direct people to the blog posts.
It has a really long URL. I'll just read the first paragraph. He says, sometimes you have to cross the line to know where the line is, just ask any 2-year-old. So clearly he knows he's doing something controversial here. Maybe this is what happens when you spend too much time with a movie. You start thinking about it when it's not around, and then you start wanting to touch it. I've been watching 2001: A Space Odyssey regularly for 4 decades, but it wasn't until a few years ago when I started thinking about touching it, and then over the holidays I decided to make my move. Why now? I don't know. Maybe I wasn't old enough to touch it now. Maybe I was too scared to touch it until now. Maybe because not only does the film not need my or anyone's help, but it is not the most impressively imagined. But if it's not the most impressively imagined sustained piece of visual art created in the 20th century, then it's tied for first. If I was going to touch it, it had better have a bigger idea than just trimming or rescoring. So I haven't watched the whole thing. My thought is that the takeaway is that he's saying that HAL eventually evolves to be the monoliths and the aliens that then go back in time to send the monolith back in time to teach the aliens, teach the apes
Sends
to
the
use
monolith
tools.
back in time.
Maybe he doesn't send it back in time, but
Right.
but the monolith evolves from HAL evolves from the monolith,
Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera. I don't know if that's where it goes. That's what I was feeling 40 minutes into the thing. Super interesting. It's still up as far as I know, so it's worth taking a look at. Oh, and they pulled it already.
The movie?
Yeah, the movie's gone.
I would think so.
Yeah. Well, the Raiders cut is still there.
I wonder if I recut Ocean's 11, how fast that'll be taken down.
He doesn't own Ocean's 11, so 20th Century
12
Fox
then.
owns.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah, you'd have 8 minutes, probably. Anyway, I thought it was an interesting exercise. If you can, I'm sure you can find it all over the place because it was just an HTML5 embed. Not that I'm saying I know anything about that. It's out there if you want to see
that's
it.
what I
check it
don't
out.
want to see. I did want to see Tobey Maguire's Star Wars edit.
Oh, I'd love to see that.
Topher Grace.
Topher Grace.
Thank you. It was, yeah, sorry, I got the toe right.
Yeah.
One was Venom, one was Spider-Man.
Oh, wow.
A lifetime
yeah.
ago.
An entire universe ago. The Falcon 9 first stage hard landing we talked about last week when they tried to land the first stage of the rocket, the first one that falls off as it's going to space on a barge off the coast of Florida. John Carmack and Elon Musk were talking on Twitter one night, and Musk was like, we have these pictures of this laying around. We should probably release them. They're pretty cool. And then he shared them on Twitter with Carmack, and then immediately the next morning there was a Vine of the crash landing. He called it a rapid unassembly. What did he call it? He called it an RUD.
That's funny.
A rapid unexploded. I don't know. Anyway, it was funny. It was.
Didn't stop them from getting $1 billion of investment
Oh, yeah, that's not on the list, is it?
From Google, right?
from Google
Yeah.
and investment firm.
So here's an interesting thing. My parents are staying down in Cocoa Beach right now, and they were there watching local news when the SpaceX thing, when it crashed. And the dad said that the tone of the local news in Cocoa Beach, which is where Cape Canaveral is mocks them regularly.
No.
Yes. He said that because it's a NASA town.
Here's these rocket hobbyists who are
Look at these
farting around.
Look at these chodes.
Oh, my
They
God.
can't even land on a barge. I kind of want to dig up some local news coverage. This is all third hand from my dad. Not the best judge of character, but
Is this archived on archive.org since they do all the TV stuff now?
I don't know. We'll have to see. Lightroom Mobile came out for Android
No,
earlier
can we
this
talk
week.
about the
yeah.
Google I think
Yeah.
that's really interesting. So
$1 billion?
last year, Elon Musk said that he wanted to give the world the internet by shooting up 700 satellites into outer space. And Google came on board this week and said that you
Oh,
can,
that's what they came on board for?
yeah,
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah, for $1 billion. And so they wanted to make each of these 700 satellites for under $1 million each, and have them each weigh 250 pounds, which
Wow.
by today's standards, both of those is very hard to do.
Yeah.
But I guess they found a way, or they're going to find a way.
If anybody can.
Progress.
I'm
Yeah.
curious how if it's it can't be a two-way connection. What is even the downstream connection?
So here's the, as I understand it, the satellite plan is a low Earth orbit plan, not a geosynchronous orbit. So the latency problems that you have with existing like Hughes satellite internet, because it has to go such a phenomenally, geosynchronous orbit is really far away. I'm not going to look it up right now, but it's a significant, like it takes a significant amount of time, I think on the order of 250 milliseconds for the radio signal to go to space, to the geosynchronous orbit, and then bounce back. And then you have all the normal latency of the internet on top of that. So that's why satellite internet was kind of janky. This stuff is supposed to be low orbit, so it's much closer. So a couple 100 miles, 150, 200 miles, more aligned with like the GPS satellite constellation and stuff like that.
Okay.
So the latency is going to be a lot less.
Yeah, but how do I get a signal that far? What
I'm sure you have a dish.
Is that what I have?
I mean, you could even be, those.
I thought dishes were only downstream.
No, you can do upstream on
I
dishes.
didn't know that. Okay.
But if they're low Earth orbit, they're not going to be in the same place. So it has to be more ambient than that, like cell phone, like a cell phone thing. So you have maybe say, imagine, the transmitters that you put on your building if you have wireless broadband. It's a microwave transceiver that's looks like about the size of half of a pizza box, maybe. You hang that on the outside of your building. I would assume with this, you just aim it up at the sky. And if you look at what they can do with high power, with receivers,
700 doesn't sound like a lot.
700 million?
700 satellites.
You can get a lot of
Coverage.
coverage. I mean, I think that there's only 50 GPS satellites. Or
You
something
don't
like
need
that.
to cover the oceans.
It's true. It's true.
But if they're in low Earth orbit, they're going to be constantly circling, so they don't stay in one place. So you'll end up covering the entire planet.
Can
which
you
is
not lock to the
awesome.
Earth's rotation?
Not at that altitude. You have to get really far away to be rotating at the same speed without flying off into space.
Huh.
That's why there's 18 sunrises on the ISS a day, because the ISS is rotating at a different speed than the.
So that's a low Earth orbit?
That's a low Earth orbit. I'm looking to see how many GPS satellites there are, because that's the comparable thing. There are 24. The baseline is 24 positioned in 6 Earth-centered orbital planes with 4 operation satellites and a spare satellite slot in each orbital plane. The system can support a constellation of up to 30 satellites in orbit. So, so there's not that many. There's
Yeah,
not
wow.
that many GPS satellites.
Really?
This is a
You connect to
shitload
a
more.
lot.
Yeah, but to get a GPS lock, you need 3 satellites.
It's really
And
6 plus.
there's nothing to the signal. This is the internet we're talking about.
Right. This is going both ways too, which is
And both ways.
different. So I don't there's a lot that we don't know about how this works. I have to imagine it's gonna be something bigger than a phone. Like you'll have a base station
Yeah.
that you then have a Wi-Fi hotspot that comes out from. But I mean, if you think about having low cost internet in places right now that you don't have any internet at all, or slow 3G cellular or something worse, I mean that's super cool.
The
Like,
fact that it's a two-way connection makes a world of difference to me, because as I said, I thought it was just
Yeah.
one way.
Well, and it may also be that, if it's internet, it has to be two-way, because you have to be able to send your request up to get data back down.
I know at one point some of the satellite connections required you to dial in, and then that's how you would send
Yes.
your upstream, and you get your
Jeez.
downstream through the satellite.
So the current gen. So my parents had satellite at home as recently as 3 years ago, and it was two-way to the satellite. You can send
Cool.
from the dish.
Yeah.
It was terrible. It was really phenomenally bad.
Network the planet.
Mainly because of bandwidth limits. So they were not. It was set up for the contract that they had was designed for a time when the internet, when web pages were small, and it didn't like always connected stuff. So like a Twitter client or iMessage client or AIM or something like that being connected ate into their monthly allotment. And even though it was a tiny amount of data going back, just the act of being connected all the time
Yep.
eventually got them throttled to the point that it was useless.
Jeez.
I mean, they have 100 megabit fiber to their house now, so don't weep for them. It's much better.
It's interesting too, that because Google had their own aspirations of bringing the internet to the world with their Loon program,
which
you guys
they're rolling out.
already mentioned.
Yeah.
Can compliment that.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's just here comes Elon Musk with his $1 billion plan, and they're right on board.
Well, and it may be that this is more of a like what was the Wi-Fi wide area Wi-Fi stuff called?
Yeah, it's supposed to broadcast to the city, right? Like,
Yeah, but that was more of a that was an intermediary too, right? That was one big tower broadcasting to
Yeah.
those microwave nodes, and then you dole out on a local area to Wi-Fi. So you don't have like whatever that was called built into your phone. You have it. You connect to an access point.
It's like Bruce Wayne putting sonar on all his phones in Dark Knight.
It's what everybody needs.
that's right.
Bat vision.
That's just like
Building a utility just for crime fighting purposes. Monitoring the world.
The other thing that Elon Musk announced last week that was interesting was the Hyperloop. They're going to build a test track in Texas. He announced at an event in Texas last week.
Hyperloop.
Yeah.
Hyperloop, if you don't remember, is the high-speed conceptual high-speed people mover from San Francisco to Los Angeles in 30 minutes using a partial vacuum in a tube. You get into another Batman invention, right? Like remember the people mover in one of the Schumacher Batmans where he goes from Wayne Manor to his office in a high-speed tube.
I think that was a slide.
No. It wasn't a slide. It was a
pneumatic tube.
It was a pneumatic tube. Right. Hyperloop is basically that thing that used to be at banks to send checks to the
I like
to the
those.
teller.
But
that you
and
can ride.
libraries.
Yeah, libraries, government buildings.
Terry Gilliam embraced those pneumatic tubes very well.
New York had a whole system of them.
Yeah,
Send cats through them.
really, you could send a cat.
Could send a cat.
Sounds like that would be awful for the cats.
Not to be deterred, the train that Elon Musk was responding to, the
Yes.
very expensive slow train that we actually came up with, they actually broke ground on that a couple weeks ago.
Really?
Yeah.
So theoretically, by the time I die,
Yes.
I should be able to take a train from San Francisco to LA.
That's right.
great.
Fantastic. 2-hour trip.
I forget.
4, I thought.
Yeah, it's reasonable. It's better than going to the airport and going through security and all that.
I don't. I have TSA pre. I don't know that that's true.
Sorry. No, you're right. You're right.
Some people don't like flying by plane.
You gotta wait.
You don't like flying by
you
plane?
might
No,
be
I'm saying
delayed.
John Madden.
Oh,
This
John
purely
Madden
for
doesn't
John
work
Madden.
anymore.
A train would be beautiful. A nice coastal.
I like a train ride.
Train ride would be great.
Have you ever taken the ride from LA to
It's
San
not
Diego?
coastal.
No, it's inland.
It's got to be a little coastal.
It's got to be through the cheap
I can
parts
see
of
the ocean
no.
at some point, right?
It's all marshes.
They can't afford that country. They can't afford that. They got to buy
They
this
could
stuff.
barely afford these.
It's already billions of dollars.
I can see the ocean from a plane just fine.
Yep. Lightroom Mobile came out for Android.
That's right.
How is it? Is it the same as iOS version?
Same as iOS, phone only,
Okay.
no tablet.
That makes sense given the tablet ecosystem on Android right now.
No, it doesn't. It makes no sense. It should be tablet first, then phone.
Except for people have phones and people don't have tablets.
The restriction is arbitrary.
That's fair, especially on Android.
Hey, I discovered you can install Android on the Banana Pi. Do you know
What's a
about that?
Banana Pi?
It's a Raspberry Pi that's souped up. It's got it has
Like overclocked
has a
souped up?
SATA port on it. It has tons of RAM and some other cool things. It can act as a USB device, and you can install Android on it. There's a distribution. You just install it, and there you've got like Android running on whatever you want. Pretty cool.
That is super cool. What was the next thing? The Apple Watch. There were Apple Watch leaks this week, or
That was a couple weeks ago.
we didn't talk about it last
No, we
week,
didn't.
did we?
No.
Yeah. So SDK stuff. They updated the Apple Kit. Is that Watch Kit SDK? And a lot of stuff came out as a result of that. And then there were also some leaks about what the Apple Watch app control app looks like. I kind of glanced at that because it was moderately interesting. Did you see anything that was worth talking about there, Jeremy?
No, that's why I didn't bring it up last week.
I was just wanted to make sure. People asked about it last week. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was news, but just very little that's of any interest.
It seems like it's coming out in the next 60 days
Yeah.
because they said Q1. So we have 2 more months of Q1.
Wow.
Yep, sign me up. I want one so badly. I tried to get one of those.
Oh, the ripoffs? The
No,
knockoffs?
Oh, that would be great for like $27.
Yeah.
I'd buy one of those.
I
But
wish if I had known that they were at CES selling them on the floor, I would have gone back and bought one.
Of course you would have known. They saved so they released their story until no
course.
one could buy one.
no, the $150 Withings smartwatch.
Oh, the
The 150
Activité?
Activité
Activité Pop. Yes.
Pop.
Yes, it's cool. It's a standard analog watch.
I
There's
like
no
it.
display, but you can tap the glass, and it like does smartwatch functions.
And well, there are two analog dials.
Fitness stuff.
One for time and one for your step progression.
Yeah, right.
Which I like.
Yeah.
As
I
an
thought that
analog
was good.
dial.
It's a good looking watch.
I looked at it at CES. It looked really cool. Voxel. This is the last thing. There's a story on Tech Meme or Mashable about a 3D printer called the Voxel 8 that lets you embed circuitry in the print.
This is it, man.
This is the thing you've been waiting for.
I'm telling you, this is going to change 3D printing.
So they're using silver because it has appropriate characteristics, conductivity. It doesn't tarnish immediately, stuff like that. The copper, when they tried copper, it immediately oxidized when they laid it down in the tracks. But they printed things like a 3D printed quadcopter that had had the circuitry to connect motors and stuff built into the frame. Looks super cool.
I mean, the fact that you can actually embed circuitry at all is going to change the way that people use 3D printers. Because because you'll be able to do things you can't otherwise do. Like, you don't have to have exposable areas where your circuitry is running. You can actually embed it inside of plastic that's, completely encased. You'll be able to sell these things and wire them up to batteries and motors.
Put your own motors and stuff in. Yeah,
it's really cool. This one in particular, early days.
Again, this is like AR stuff where in 10 years we're going to laugh at this.
Exactly.
But right now, it's a way to taste the future.
Definitely.
That's the same as AR and VR, for that matter. I think that's it for news, unless you guys have anything else. I'm going to play some music, and we'll talk about what we've been testing. Norman Chan, in your left and right hands, you're holding what looks like a tiny, almost bezel-less Dell tablet.
It's fantastic.
You like it?
I love it.
That's the thinnest tablet I've ever seen.
I like that it's square.
Rectangular.
It stands up on its own, but you have to fidget with it. It's a Dell Venue 87000.
That's a terrible name.
Yes.
It's Venue 8 7000.
That's right.
It's
Android
8
tablet,
inches?
8.4 inches,
Okay.
2560 by 1600 OLED screen, and
Man.
has very thin bezels around three of its sides.
How do you? So looking at this, I like that you can kind of hold it with the crotch, on the chin. How do you like the no bezel? Does that impact the way you use
Fantastic.
it? Really?
You're one with the content.
Do you find like the screen responding to your thumb sticking on the side and stuff like that?
No.
Interesting.
I also don't hold my tablet like that.
Fair enough.
Easel grip.
What if
all
you
the way.
do hold your tablet? Well, of course, I
It-
guess you can
it's
also
thin enough.
it's thin enough. You can grip it by the sides.
Almost as narrow as just the iPad mini screen by itself.
Is this 16 by 10?
16 by 10.
It's a beautiful tablet.
It's really pretty. How much is it?
$400.
Wow.
No LTE, but micro SD slot for
Why-
storage.
Okay, so that's what the slot on the side is.
That's what storage.
Do they have an LTE option or no?
Not right now.
How's battery?
So far, very good.
Okay, like full normal, what you would expect from a tablet.
I've read 10 hours, and in my experience, more than that for
Okay.
web browsing.
That's good. I started ripping Blu-rays again. It's been a while, but my daughter is to the age now that she's destroying discs. So rather than have her destroy lots of discs and have to keep rebuying them, I started ripping Blu-rays, and it's a disease.
Is it like a real-time process?
No,
How long does it take?
runs about, depends on the. So I'm using MakeMKV to do the rip, to copy the H.264 videos off of the disk, decrypt them, and put them in a MKV container on the drive with whatever audio and subtitle streams I want. And then I pipe that into Handbrake, because those usually are 20 or 30 gigs, which is fine.
Yeah.
I could probably do enough hard drives to make that work, but I'd rather not, just because 4 terabyte drives aren't that cheap. Once you put them in, so that takes about 30 minutes to an hour, depending on how big the movie is.
To rip or encode?
To rip.
Ah.
And then the encode runs at anywhere from 5 to 10 frames a second, depending on the type of content you're encoding.
Wow.
So you're looking at, and just to be clear, I've futzed with settings a fair amount. I haven't pushed as far as I could into making it look shitty and making it smaller.
Yeah.
I chose to do something that's going to be safe, easily repeatable, won't require a lot of redos,
Are you
even if it takes longer.
Using GPU acceleration of
I'm using
anything?
Handbrake, so they don't have GPU acceleration. They have they support Intel's quick view H.264 encode for certain profiles and certain settings, but my CPU doesn't support that, so I'm boned. This is on an old hexa-core. It is. I'll bring in one of the files because I'm interested to see how long it takes to run on your computer, Norm, on the octa-core. It's, you can make it go faster. You can make it run almost real time. The quality was much worse, or the file sizes were a lot bigger. So I'm taking the time to do it. Like I said, I want to have something I don't have to futz with on each individual file. There's already enough of that with the audio streams and the subtitles and all that stuff. But the results are really good, and I'm getting files that are between 5 and say 12 gigs, depending on how big the movie was originally. So then animated stuff seems to be a lot better just because there's less color. It's more flat colors. So that's what I'm working on. When I figure out settings, when I get settings to a point that I'm really comfortable with them and think they're pretty solid, I'll share with an article on the site. I also started using my iFi and my camera and my 5N again over the holidays because the newer versions of the iFi firmware let you switch back and forth between connecting to Wi-Fi when you're at home and doing a direct-to-device mode when you're out. So you can actually open your iPhone, connect to the iFi's Wi-Fi access point, and then see the pictures pop up on your phone as you're shooting, which is awesome. I don't know if people are into that. If you are, send us a question. We'll talk about it more. And then the last thing is I've been using a real watch, like a traditional watch instead of a smartwatch for the last few weeks, which has been weird.
Yeah, how's that transition?
For the first week or so, I still wear the Pebble occasionally when I'm in a situation where I feel like it would be useful. But for the first week or so, every time my phone vibrated in my pocket, I just looked at the watch to wait for the notification to come in.
Yep.
Because with the Pebble, at least, I don't know if it's the same with the Android Wear stuff, but with the Pebble, the phone vibrates and then you have a split second, and then the watch hits. So you basically could look at the watch before the notification comes, so you know if you wanted it. Well, you can go back to it as well. But yeah, so once I got used to that not happening, I kind of like it. I still tell the time. I like the watch. I don't know. When the Apple Watch comes out, there's going to be a real day of reckoning.
Oh, so you're done with Pebble?
No. Like I said, I'm using multiple watches. I'm switching back and forth.
Why?
Because I got a new watch for Christmas.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah. I hadn't used a regular watch in a long time, and I realized I quite like it. We were talking to a friend yesterday at lunch, and I was like, we should probably talk about this. This is kind of interesting. But anyway.
Charging is going to be the biggest thing. Apple needs good charging solutions.
What do you mean?
For the Apple Watch.
Yeah, but you have to charge it every night. Is that going to be a problem?
I'm saying more, they need to make it easier for people to charge it.
It has a little stand. The expensive one comes with a stand, right?
Really?
Yeah, the expensive ones, I think. I believe so.
Oh.
And there were even stands available at CES.
So my watch, the thing about my watch is it's a mechanical watch, and it's not an automatic, so you have to wind it every day.
Yeah.
Turns out, not that big a deal.
Well, oh, yeah, right.
Like, I always knocked, hey, I have a digital quartz watch or whatever that you put a battery in the last 2 years. You just get that. It's like, I think.
Right, but with a manual wind-up watch, you can do that wherever you are.
That's true. Absolutely
true. The digital
true.
watch runs out of power. If you're in your car and runs out of power,
that's trouble.
You can't charge it and see the time again until you find the charging station.
So the thing that I'll say, 2 or 3 weeks into wearing a mechanical watch that needs winding every day is I find myself forgetting to wind it much less frequently than I found myself with a dead Pebble, because I think daily charge, even though this sounds weird, I think having to charge daily just becomes part of your routine. Having to charge once a week means I always fucking forget it until it's dead.
That's funny. Interesting.
Which I don't know if that's a universal thing. I'd be interested to hear what people think.
It's bizarre to me, people who do not daily charge their phones also.
Well, at this point, it's just the thing. I put it on the nightstand with the plug at night.
Exactly.
And
some people don't.
A thing that I do.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
I know people who don't. Who they have to charge in the middle of the day because it's not because they stress their phone to a day and a half.
Some people just don't take those steps to improve their lives. Those small little steps.
No, I think these
are
things that technology can solve. I think it's a thing that charging pads and wireless charging.
Oh, wireless charging sucks.
Well, it works if it's built into the phone.
You mean inductive?
Yeah,
that's how the Apple Watch is going to charge, right?
But
yes.
you still
That's not contact. What Norm's talking about is like power mat type charge pads.
Like the Nexus 5.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
If you can just buy a pad and just put it on there.
I want an Apple Watch so bad that I bought my kids smartwatches for Christmas.
What did you get them?
The VTech Kitty Zoom.
What does it do?
It costs about $70, which I've seen is now down to $50 now that Christmas is over. And it's not connected, but it's a tiny little touchscreen, and you can play games and do a stopwatch and tell time.
Tamagotchi.
And
So it's like the Game & Watch.
you can record your voice and modulate it and turn it into like a robot.
Kids have it so
All
lucky
kinds
these
of
days.
things. It can take pictures. It can take video.
Is it going to prime them for the Apple Watch?
It primed me for the Apple Watch. So that's my little smartwatch story.
Oh.
Jeremy, anything you've been testing you want to talk about?
I killed my 3D printer.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
What'd you do?
I left the house with it printing something, and it turns out that if you're not careful with your filament when you take it out and put the filament back on the shelf, it can become wound within itself, and can wrap under one of the spools. And so I guess that had happened, and I left, and after it started printing long enough that it jammed, and it pulled the spool rack up onto itself. Who knows? I wasn't there to see it, but
Oh, boy.
It ended up jamming the print head, such that
So did you have to take it apart?
I did. Which the first time I ever did that, you built yours.
Yeah.
Mine was assembled. So I took it apart and looked online, found out how to unclog it.
So the hot end was clogged?
It was, but it didn't work after I unclogged it.
Did you get it? So when I clogged our printhead, which I did almost immediately after turning on the printer the second time, I had to heat it up really, really hot, like 240.
Oh, wow.
Hold it with a pair of pliers. And then I took a 1.75 millimeter rod and put some plastic in and then use that to jam the plastic through. Mm-hmm. But I think if you leave the PLA in there long enough, it like crystallizes and you have to drill it out, right?
It's similar to what I did, but no, I got it unclogged, but whatever it is that heats it up, the thermistor or something, it didn't work. The thermometer still worked, but it wouldn't heat up.
Did you plug it back in all the way?
Yeah.
Did you miss cables?
No, I tried everything.
Okay.
So I had to order a new.
I have a spare hot end if
Oh,
you want.
really?
Yeah, you should have asked.
Those are pricey. I ordered a new one.
I thought I was going to need one when I jammed ours, and we needed the printer for the live show, so I just bought another one, and then I was able to fix it.
Well, I'll know that next
Yeah.
time. All fixed, though.
Okay, good. Let's take a Norm, anything else for you?
I got Gear VR.
Oh, Gear VR.
Jeremy, you want to put it on?
Desperately.
You don't have the note.
Doesn't matter. You can ergonomics. We will get the notes coming.
A live test on site. It's going to feel
Samsung did a blog post yesterday about the design of the Gear VR headset. They were very proud of this thing.
It's really front heavy, but I think that's unavoidable with the.
Well, it's,
Yeah.
without the phone, you can't tell. So imagine adding.
What does it look like when you
another-
look through without the phone?
Oh,
That's horrible.
you look like Wally.
Huh?
You know what? It's not.
Get closer to the mic, Jeremy.
I know that you guys said it's very heavy.
Well,
and
the
there's
phone's
no
not there
phone
yet.
in there.
Yeah.
But I'm actually surprised how comfortable it is.
Well, you don't have the top strap on either.
Yeah, you don't even.
Oh,
have
there's a top
The
strap?
top strap helps
Nice
a ton.
I like the padding that they used. It feels good.
Yeah,
Can I see? I want to try it with
no phone.
no phone. The Go Glaze. Oh wow. Oh, that's not what you want. Wow.
Will
okay,
looks
I'm
like
done.
a minion.
I'm the
from
one.
Despicable Me.
So how long until we get the Note 4 in here?
A week and a half.
Comes next week.
Sweet.
Yeah. You guys want to take some questions? We'll talk more about the Gear VR in the future.
Oh,
The
it works with my
future.
glasses.
Where it belongs.
Yeah, exactly. Again, more touching the future. I'm going to play some music. And then we're going to talk. We're going to take some questions.
Emails?
Well, but we do the other one.
Email.
'Cause it's, we don't do emails. We do
Emails?
No.
Questions?
Boom.
If you have a question for This Is Only a Test, the email address is podcast@tested.com. Send your questions. We don't like, hey, which phone should I get questions because they're boring. Send us good questions like these. Norm's gasping as he
I'm
looks
curious.
into VR.
What if we put Google Cardboard on this, and if it would work with Google Cardboard? I can see all the subpixels on my 1080p phone.
That's an IPS phone, isn't it?
No, it's
Oh,
OLED.
it's an OLED. Okay. Our first question comes from Julius Johnson. He says, hello. How do Norm, Will, and the guest handle tech support for parents? Every time I get home for the holidays, I have a bunch of easy, for me, not for my parents, tech stuff to do. Upgrade old drivers, reinstall programs with bugs, or just remove some desktop icons that they don't actually need. I don't mind doing this at all, but is there a way I could do this remotely so that I can skip trying to guide them on the phone when something doesn't work? I am on Windows. My parents have Mac, PC, and Android tablets. Would be great if I could access them all. Thanks. How do you handle? You have remote parents, right, Jeremy?
Yes.
Do you do tech support for
It
them?
has gotten to the point where I've tried a remote desktop before. I would actually recommend the thing we talked about last week, which is the Chrome remote desktop,
Oh, it's a great solution.
because that would be a cross-platform.
Yeah. It doesn't work on iOS.
No, that's true. So you're out of luck there, but you'll be able to see their Macs and their PCs, any kind of desktop environment.
That's good.
How would you do
I think there's like GoToMeeting and stuff like that, but most of it doesn't work
for iPads?
There's a GoToMeeting client for iPad. I assume there's a GoToPC client for iPad. I don't think there's a way to go the other way from the
That's
PC
what I
to
mean,
the
yeah.
iPad. The good thing is the iPad's straightforward enough. Usually, you can I pick up my iPad and walk my parents
Right.
through it.
Yep.
I was lucky enough that my sister married somebody who's technically inclined, so a lot of my responsibilities on the tech support front have passed to the local branch of the nerds. I don't. If people have suggestions, I would love to hear this because I think it's a problem that a lot of people have.
Yeah. There's always just FaceTime, Skype on your phone,
Yeah.
and have them aim it at whatever device they're having trouble with.
I've done that more than I care to.
Yeah, I mean, it works.
Sometimes that's the best way to figure out what horrible way they've messed something up.
Yep.
Because otherwise, you'll never get to the point that my phone was in airplane mode. And as we move to more touch interfaces with fewer labels, it's a lot harder. Like teaching my parents how to do the pull up from bottom to get control center on their iPads, real significant problem. Like that was hard.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't work in places where the keyboard's on. You have to start from off the screen, which is a new gesture.
Right.
Like I feel the pain of UI UX designers trying to get people to learn how to do that stuff.
Yep.
But anyway, I think the Chrome Remote Desktop is a really, really solid tip, though. Next question comes from Lars Peter, I guess. This is another. We're getting a lot of Scandinavian questions this week. Hey guys, big fan of the site for several years. My question is: have you ever considered making a tested app? I don't know if you had one in the early days, but we considered developing one now. We don't need a tested app because our site is a responsive design and shrinks down to fit on mobile. The videos play on mobile. Everything works on mobile. So you don't need an app to view tested. You can just open it up on your phone and make an icon on the home screen if you like us that much, and it'll just work.
Responsive.
We're small, so building out, like, just from a philosophical standpoint, when you're a site that has 3 full-time people working on it and shared time with engineering, if we had to support both a website and an app, things that already take too long to fix and change would take even longer. So we don't want to build an app for the site. And if you want to watch our videos, they're on YouTube, which has a lot of really good apps.
Related, if anybody wanted to make an Octopi app, I would pay $10 for that.
I think it works pretty well on the phone.
Works fine, but there's a lot of zooming involved, and I just want to be able to use nice big fat buttons all the time.
Fair enough.
Responsive design fails when there's pixel scaling in web browsers on high DPI screens.
Yes.
So when the screen, for example...
It doesn't have to. It just
doesn't
does because
have
most
to.
people don't support the high DPI screens right in their image tags.
Exactly.
Including us.
Can I hold
for,
that some more?
for full disclosure. Pat, any more, Norm? Are you
Nope.
good? Okay. Patrick asks, hey guys, I'm looking to start using smart things and had a few questions. One thing I've not been able to find info about is how lights controlled by multiple switches work with the system. I see 2 different scenarios. One, have one smart switch to control the lights from smart things, and the other switch or switches be regular. Would the smart switch be able to tell when the light is turned on or off via a regular switch? 2, replace all regular switches with smart ones. I assume they're able to communicate and know that another switch has turned the light on or off. So there's a third scenario here you're not thinking about, which is to replace the light in the receptacle with a smart bulb and then just leave the switches on all the time. If you want to use they're called master and slave switches when you have or 3-way switches when you have two switches that control one light. For example, if there's a hallway or a stairway with a switch on either end, one of those switches is the main switch. The other switch is a secondary switch that works off of the main switch. And you'll end up in a situation where you tap, where one can be up and one can be down. There's all sorts of variables. If you're using like touch-aware switches, they use the same thing, but they can communicate to each other across the wires. If you want to do this with Zigbee or Z-Wave enabled switches, all you have to do is get three-way switches that are Zigbee or Z-Wave enabled, and it just works itself out. You have to have relatively modern wiring for those to work. You have to have a control line, so you need 3 wires coming into the switch rather than just 2. But aside from that, it should just work. If you want to get in without having to replace a bunch of switches in your house, the bulbs are probably the way to go. And then you can just put a little thing over that says "Don't turn off." Leave the bulb on. Leave the switch on all the time. Next question.
I'm thinking about going Philips Hue in my new house. What do you think of that?
There are much better alternatives. Do you want the colors or do you just want smart switches?
No, I like the colors.
Okay, there are not much better alternatives for the colors. The Hue stuff adds a layer of abstraction between the Z-Wave and Zigbee controls because you need to have the Hue hub in addition to the Zigbee and Z-Wave hub. Cree and GE both have really reasonably priced smart bulbs compared to the Hue stuff. So you can get GE Link bulbs at Home Depot for like $20 when they have them in stock, which is their LED bulbs. So that it's basically a double premium over what a normal LED bulb costs these days. Cree just announced some bulbs. I haven't actually had a chance to test
But they're
those
just
yet.
white, right?
They're just white.
Yeah.
But they're dimmable, which is nice.
That's good.
And so that means when you turn them on, they do the soft fade up and the soft fade down, which is really cool. And I don't know what the Cree are. The GE bulbs are Zigbee. So they'll work with smart things and a bunch of other stuff.
$10 a pop for non-smart, $20 a pop for smart.
I think that's reasonable, right? That seems, I mean,
They last a long time.
They last, I mean, the theory is that even for a non-smart one,
quarter of a million hours.
you don't have to replace them ever.
Right.
Unless someone shatters them.
Yeah. I'm using one of the GE Link bulbs at home. When I get the Cree bulbs in, we'll revisit and do Hue versus GE Link versus smart versus the Cree. Because Philips also has, I think they call them Lux bulbs now, which are, and I have some of those as well. They're not color bulbs. They're just cool to warm and dimmable. So you can adjust the color temperature a little bit, I think, and then adjust the brightness.
They tie
as you
into
see
the hub?
fit. And they tie into the same hub. So
Can the hub fit? Is there a limit to how many bulbs the hub can fit?
I have 6 devices on my Hue hub right now, and nothing's changed. There's no problems with it.
And also, if it can't find the connection to the hub, then it just works as a regular bulb.
Well, yeah. So the nice thing about using the smart bulbs instead of the switches, it's more applicable to lamps. So if you have like a end lamp or bedside lamps and stuff like that, if you use the switches, then you can turn it off in 2 places, right? So it turns off at the wall and then no power comes in. You have to turn the phone on or something to flip that switch. When you pull the switch on and off, nothing happens because there's no power coming to it if it's off at the wall. With the smart bulbs, there's power coming to it. So if you flip the switch on and off, it just turns on without having to turn your phone on. If say the internet connection is out, your internet's down, your smart hub is broken or something like that. So there is essentially a manual failback on the smart bulbs if you use them instead of the smart switches.
Got
that
it.
Makes sense.
Yes.
Lights, the colors are fun.
You can sync it up with Sharknado.
It's
The movie.
Jeremy Williams.
You could also sync it up with 12 Monkeys.
You're not curious?
12 Monkeys.
The TV show.
The TV show. 12
Is that
Monkeys.
right?
That's in
Yeah.
the
Seriously?
Yes.
How do you do that? How does that even work?
I think you give the app. You download an app because
You download a special player app, right?
you download a special Hue app because you have to use the Philips Hue app to control the hub. There are third-party apps.
Right. It's a
And
big
so
API.
I think it's a separate app that you just download and then run it when the show starts.
Wow. Okay. That means you can't skip ads.
Well,
It's got to sync up. It can't be like playing Dark Side of the Moon with Wizard of Oz.
I think
mean,
it's got to be a player.
It's got to be synced up. You
Yeah.
can skip ads, I would think.
I think it has to. I think it's like a physical movie player. Then you can AirPlay or
Yeah, maybe.
Chromecast or
the
whatever.
answer is probably online already.
Yeah, we should know this. Chris writes in and says, "Hey guys, I have the worst white elephant ever. The worst white elephant experience I have ever participated in, this is relating to Norm's white elephant with the Men of Game Dev calendar that went to somebody who doesn't know what that is. My first time participating in the white elephant, I ended up with a bunch of small things and a lottery ticket. I scratched off the ticket. It was a $100 winner.
Wow.
The person who I didn't know came up to me after the party and said, "Oops, I mistakenly put that in the package," and took it right from my hand. I didn't know these people that well, so I went along with it, but that has always stuck with me.
What?
That was a
Does
terrible
that?
white elephant. One year we gave my brother-in-law a fake winner lottery ticket. Like it looked like a real lottery ticket, and it was like a $5,000 winner. And so everybody scratched their lottery tickets off and lost. And he scratched his lottery ticket off and just put it in his pocket, didn't say anything. And then he got called out when everybody had been drinking a little bit later. So that was fun.
That's the way to do it.
I'm going to go ahead and tell you, fake winner lottery tickets, not a good idea in a
Malicious.
family environment. It is very damaging to relationships. That'll do it for news this week, for emails this week, rather. If you have a question, the email address is podcast@tested.com. Please send questions. We always love to get them. We also need more outros. The newest outro is like a month and a half old. So if you hear us say something dumb, you want to cut it into the outro, do that. We'll say your name on the podcast. A few other housekeeping things. Creature Geek's first season ended on Friday, so if you like, you should go back and listen to it. It's a really awesome show about effects makeup from Frank Ippolito, who's you should know by now if you're a tested regular, and Len Peralta, who is also a podcast kind of a he's a monster of creativity. He's an illustrator. He does a lot of podcasts. He does a ton of cool stuff.
I've enjoyed the videos of you writing things at CES.
That is a thing that we have going on the site right now.
That's fun.
I wrote a lot of dumb things. As soon as they have review samples available, they're going to send us a one wheel, so we can try that thing out. I want to try the gentle carving versus the more skateboard like approach of the boost. So yeah, if you like Creature Geek, go back and listen. You should go back and listen to it. If you haven't, if you liked it, let us know. I think Frank and Len are already working on another season, so with big plans on that front. We finally got the RSS problem that was keeping a bunch of dads and Mr. and Mrs. Smith from iTunes. So if you search for those two podcasts there on iTunes now, you can go subscribe through there. If you're already subscribed through the RSS, nothing has changed. You'll keep getting the podcast that way. Once it's on iTunes, it should filter out to all of the third-party podcast apps like Overcast and Downcast and that stuff, because I think most of them pull their data from iTunes. And a bunch of dads was approved for a PAX East panel. So we're going to try to do an episode in the next couple of weeks, and then we'll be at PAX East in March, I guess, podcasting and talking about dad stuff and other things. So if you're coming to PAX East, we'll see you there. And if you're not, then we'll post it on the site after it's done, barring disastrous technical issues. I think that's it for me. Anything from you guys? Jeremy, you're on Twitter at Jerware?
At Jerware.
Or if they want to find out, any game frame related news coming?
No.
You got any hot
There's
scoops?
No news, unfortunately, but maybe someday.
Okay.
Months and
You've
months.
opened the door
away.
was closed. It seemed like for a while.
What
And
do you
now
mean?
is it the game frame?
Yeah.
Future door was closed.
Oh, yeah.
Is it opening back up?
No,
Oh.
no. I'm looking. I'm
Okay.
just looking into the various options, but there's no news, and there won't be for some time.
Okay.
But thank you for asking.
Norman Chan, you're N Chan on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
Anything coming from you?
No, we'll see you on Elite Dangerous. See you guys.
Are you playing Elite?
night.
Are you streaming?
Are you Commander?
streaming.
What's your Commander name?
Tested Norm? I've
right.
already run into 5 tested readers.
Sweet. Really?
Yeah.
Do you like run into them in a shoot you in the headway?
They've joined me for bounty hunting.
Do
and-
they really?
Do you have a
Yeah.
posse?
No.
Do you voice com with them or just
No,
text?
just text.
Yeah.
And then they shout out on Twitter.
Are there clans?
I don't
on
think
Elite?
there are clans.
Not yet.
I mean,
Like you can't
they're
team up?
friends groups.
Okay.
You friends groups. It's a fun game.
And I'm Will Smith on Twitter if you want to find me. We'll be back next week with another edition of This Is Only Test. I'm going to be in Chicago this weekend. I looked at the weather yesterday and it's scary.
No, you don't want to do that.
Yeah, it's like 32 high. The high is just barely above freezing. Do you have any life tips, life hacks for me surviving winter? I haven't been someplace that's that cold in a really long time.
Oh, it's invigorating. It'll make you appreciate the Bay Area
Do I
again.
have to breathe through my nose or anything?
You'll remember why you live here.
Yeah, probably. Why it's worth paying all this money. Yeah, so we're not going to do a meetup or anything, but if you're going to the thing that I'm going to in Chicago, I'll see you there. That'll do it for us this week. Have a good week, guys. And today's outro comes to us from Ad Hoc I didn't listen to this one before I put it in here, so if it's super offensive, I apologize. It has a naughty word in the title. Hi there, I didn't see you.
Fuck yeah, I do prime rib on Thanksgiving.
That's from the episode where we learned that Norm does prime rib on Thanksgiving.
Fuck yeah.
Bye.